Good evening, everybody. I see most of you are online. So I welcome you all to these classes on economics. I have been told that your classes for other subjects have already begun, and from today onwards we'll be starting with the classes for economics. Today was supposed to be a polity class, I think yesterday also, but I have heard that Ashish sir is not well, so that is why his classes had to be cancelled. And my classes were scheduled to begin from tomorrow, but in his absence, now your classes will be, I'm taking classes one day in advance. Anyways, so I hope all of you are doing good. All of you have been given some basic knowledge, some basic rules, some basic orientation about this exam, how to appear, how to prepare, how to keep yourself motivated. I hope all of you know the drill. So let's straight away start into the economic stuff. This is not a new batch, so therefore I'll skip all those formalities. Regarding economics, the first and the most basic question that is asked is, what is the source of preparation for this subject? What is the course? What is the syllabus? Where do we have to read the syllabus from? Where do we have to, what is the material that we would be referring to? All these things. So I'll answer those things first. So please take a note of if you want to. Otherwise, the things that I'm going to tell you would be very generic. Most of you know all about all those things already. First and foremost, your first basic source is your NCERT. I don't need to tell about it. Just a second. Yeah. Your basic source is NCERT. There are 3 NCERTs that I would like you to refer to at least. 3 NCERTs that I would like you to refer to at least. Iske siva, more NCERTs if you want to refer, it's up to you. But 3 NCERTs of class 11th and 12th. There are 3 NCERTs. One is microeconomics, one is macroeconomics, and the third is Indian economy. 3 NCERTs of class 11th and 12th, microeconomics, macroeconomics, and Indian economy. These 3 NCERTs are going to be your primary source for preparation of this examination. The NCERT of microeconomics, एक microeconomics की NCERT, the NCERT of microeconomics, that NCERT I would like you to read once or twice, not more than that. Microeconomics की NCERT है, I would like you to read that once or twice. Reading of that NCERT is very important because it helps you to build the base of other two. From exam point of view, if you ask, अगर आपको एक objective analysis करना है that from where are questions asked, then more questions would be asked from, more question would be directly related to the stuff which is there in other 2 NCERTs, macroeconomics and Indian economy. However, in order to have an understanding of those 2 NCERTs, you would first need to refer to microeconomics की NCERT. So 3 NCERTs. So micro wali, read it once or twice, not more than that. लेकिन Indian economy and macroeconomics की NCERT, read them as many times as you can. As many times. There is no limit, there is no upper limit to reading those books. Read them 7, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14 times, read the same book as many times as you want to read. Every time you read, you will get some new stuff. However, that should not mean that you keep on reading the same book again and again without analyzing, without remembering, without understanding what is there in those books. बार बार एक book को पढ़ने से कोई फायदा नहीं होने वाला है. I say this with emphasis that you read the books as many times as you want to. However, don't spend your time in reading the same book again and again. So थोड़ी सी contradictory चीजें. I'll explain why I make this contradiction. Read the books as many times as you can, meaning that if you feel that there is any doubt that needs to be cleared, there is any concept that you would like to have a better understanding on, go and read that concept from NCERT. This is what I mean when I say read the book as many times as you want to. The concept that you want to understand, the concept on which you feel that there is a little bit wanting of understanding, some gap in understanding is there, that concept you go and refer to from NCERT. If you don't understand, read it again from NCERT. I'm sure that you will be able to understand it. Number one. Number two, why do I say that? Don't focus on just one book for your entire preparation. Obviously, because केवल एक बुक के ऊपर हम डिपेंडेंट नहीं हो सकते हैं. वी कैन नॉट बी डिपेंडेंट अपॉन जस्ट वन बुक और जस्ट वन सोर्स और ऑन वन सब्जेक्ट. वी हैव टू फोकस, वी हैव टू डिवाइड आवर टाइम प्रॉपर्ली अमंग्स्ट ऑल द सोर्सेज दैट वी वांट टू रीड, अमंग्स्ट ऑल द सब्जेक्ट दैट वी वांट टू प्रिपेयर फॉर. सो देयरफॉर ये दोनों चीजें मैंने बोली. सो फर्स्ट इज एनसीईआरटी. सेकंड इंपॉर्टेंट सोर्स, the second important source is your printed material. The printed material which has been given to you, your vision material which has been given to you, that is the second most important source. NCERT will be able to cover most of the topics. Some of the topics, especially those related to mains, those are which are more prominent in mains, those topics are covered in an elaborate, in a detailed manner in your printed material. So refer to your printed material also. Having said that, printed material in most of the chapters it goes 3-4 steps beyond NCERT. NCERT में अगर थोड़ा सा basic है, printed material will go 3-4 steps beyond NCERT. So therefore again help you get a more broader idea, more broader view about any topic that you want to have a detailed understanding on. So second important source would be the printed material. It is I think about 350-400 pages के आसपास आपको total printed material है. While going on through these lectures, while going on through these classes, I would expect that anytime we start a new topic, you will come to the class prepared with reading NCERT of that particular topic and prepared with reading of the printed material given to you of that particular topic. If you do this, देखो हर टीचर अपनी क्लास से पहले बोलता है, आपको कॉलेज से स्कूल से ये चीज सब लोग बोलते आए हैं कि ये पहले से पढ़ के आओ तो क्लास में अच्छा समझ में आता है. ऑब्वियसली हमने वो सब चीज नहीं करी, इसलिए शायद maybe many of us could not achieve what we wanted to achieve. Anyways, one life में आपको एक और मौका मिला है, तो at least अब की बार करना वो काम. At least this time, come to the class. In any class, come prepared to the class so that your understanding of the subject is better. One more opportunity. It's up to you whether you want to exercise it or not. I'll not be teaching in a way that I will assume that you have read you have read your notes, you have read your NCERT, all these things. I'll not assume these things. But if you come to the class prepared, trust me, you would go back from the class far more enriched, far more learned person than 3 hours before. So please come to the class after having read whatever I ask you to read. So second source is your printed material. Third important source is your newspapers. Now, 2 newspapers are absolute necessary. Absolute necessary. 2 newspapers. Minimum 2 newspapers. Minimum 2. If you want to read 3, 4, 5 newspapers, well, go ahead and read it. उसमें कोई कंजूसी नहीं है, कोई कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं है. At least 2 newspapers, but you have to obviously, certainly read at least 2 newspapers. I personally prefer reading Indian Express as a base newspaper. Personal preference है. Indian Express I like better than Hindu, so that is my personal preference. If you want to read the Hindu as a base newspaper and then top up that with Indian Express, that is your choice. So Indian Express and Hindu, keep one of them as your base newspaper and the other one as a top up newspaper. लेकिन ये 2 newspaper तो आपको पढ़ने ही हैं, संपूर्णतः आवश्यक. These are absolutely necessary that you have to read these 2 newspapers. No compromise on that. Apart from these two, I would prefer, if you are reading other newspapers as well, for example, if you can read Live Mint. If you can read Business Standard. ये जो न्यूज़पेपर है, रीड इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स, ये जो मैंने आपको 3 न्यूज़पेपर बोले, लाइव मिंट, बिजनेस स्टैंडर्ड, इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स, यू डोंट हैव टू रीड एंटायर न्यूज़पेपर्स. You don't have to read. You can be selective in reading any topic that you feel, okay, this is an interesting topic that I should have more knowledge on. You can pick up from these sources and then read it. Otherwise, Indian Express और हिंदू आपको पूरे पढ़ने पड़ेंगे. Many of you, because you have started your preparations recently, might not have been in the habit of reading newspapers. Certainly, it would be taking you a lot of time to read just one newspaper. Trust me, it takes everybody. हमको भी लगता था, सब लोगों को लगता है. अभी भी आप लोग बोलते हो, कई बार बोल भी रहे होगे कि एक न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने में 3 घंटे लग जाते हैं, तो 2 कैसे पढ़ेंगे? We don't have so much time. I completely understand that it takes 3 hours to read one newspaper. If you have to read it from एकदम cover to cover आपको पढ़ना है, it takes 2.5, 3 hours. Certainly yes. However, over a period of 15 days, 20 days, 1 month, you will develop a habit of reading newspapers in a far lesser time. लेकिन अगर 3 घंटे आज लगते हैं तो उसको लगाओ. Dedicate those 3 hours to read newspapers so that after 1 month, after 2 months, you should be in a position to finish that newspaper within 2 hours, and then further after 3-4 months, you will be in a position to finish that newspaper within a period of 1 hour. 1 घंटा लगेगा आपको After that, after 6 months, so you will be able to read it in 45 minutes. You will become so mature yourself. After 6 months or 7 months, you will become so mature yourself that you will know which article to pick, which article to not pick. Which you will give a cursory reading, you will read a particular paragraph, you will read a particular news item, and after 6-7 months, you will be in that, trust me, you will be in that state of maturity that you will understand that what would be written in this article. So, अभी अगर आप 3 घंटे invest कर रहे हो, if you are spending 3 hours today in reading newspapers, so think of it as an investment in yourself. Spend 3 hours in reading one newspaper, about 2 hours or 1.5 hours in reading second newspaper, and over a period of next 5-6 months, 7 months, you will be in a far better position to complete 2 newspapers within a period of 2 hours. लेकिन 2 newspaper पढ़ने की आदत को बिल्कुल भी compromise मत करना, please. Never ever compromise on your habit of reading. It is absolute necessity that you have to read these 2 newspapers. So third source is your newspapers. Fourth source is your current affairs material, the monthly current affairs that you get free of cost on the Vision IAS website. You get that monthly current affairs material. That monthly current affairs material is, देखो chronology में it is coming at 4th place. It is not at 3rd place. Newspaper का many students believe that current affairs is a substitute for newspaper, that rather than reading newspapers we will simply read monthly current affairs and therefore a task would be done. If you are of that category, I have nothing to add. I cannot, मैं आपका mood change नहीं कर सकता हूँ. I'll not even try to change your opinion on that. But if you are not of that category, then that's good for you. Monthly current affairs is merely a substitute. Monthly current affairs is merely a revision of primary source. Primary source is newspaper. You will get news from newspaper in order to retain what you have read in newspaper. In order to retain that, in order to have a background of that, in order to see, okay, what can be the implications, we prepare those notes for you. We prepare monthly current affairs material for you. Therefore, you read monthly current affairs material as a supplement, not as a substitute. As a supplement of the newspapers that you have read, not as a substitute. Whether to make notes or not, कई लोग बोलते हैं न्यूज़पेपर के नोट्स बनाओ मत बनाओ. देखो नोट्स बनाने का कोई फायदा नहीं होता है. There is absolutely no benefit that you are going to get of making notes from newspaper. Why? Because ऐसा नहीं है कि absolutely no benefit. Obviously there is going to be benefit. That is why people make. But you get monthly current affairs, and we are doing that गधा मजदूरी वाला काम, that labor work we are doing for you, and we are providing you notes of those newspapers. So you focus on reading, understanding, analyzing, remembering those things rather than writing. Notes बनाने का पर्पस क्या होना चाहिए? नोट्स बनाने का पर्पस ये नहीं होना चाहिए. Your purpose of making notes should not be that I will revise from these notes at a later date. That is not the purpose. If your purpose of making notes is that by writing something it helps you to remember that thing better, then certainly go ahead and make notes. If by writing something, you read some article in newspaper, you read some important point, important statistic in newspaper, you want to write it down because you feel that if you write it down, if you use your own pen, then it will help you to remember those things. Please go ahead and do it, but not for the purpose of कि मैं इसको बाद में पढ़ूंगा या पढ़ूंगी. Not for that purpose. It is not going to serve. It is not going to be of any benefit. If there is any backlog of newspapers, if you have collected 50-60 newspapers in your room, at your home, that I will read them at a later date, उनको बाहर फेंको, कभी नहीं पढ़ने वाले हो उनको. They are simply वो वहाँ पे जाके जो है धूल इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं आपके रूम की खूबसूरत. Your environment of study is being hampered negatively by the presence of those newspapers which are present in your room. If you have not read them, simply throw them away. Don't need to keep them. News is continuous. If you don't read today's newspaper, but you have read the day before's and you are reading tomorrow's newspaper, chances are that you will be mostly covered. But this cannot be extended to कि मैंने 1 महीने का newspaper नहीं पढ़ा तो पिछले 1 दिन का और 1 दिन का पढ़ लूंगा तो I will get news. No. But अगर कोई backlog है उसको बाहर निकालो. Focus on what is there, what lies ahead of you. So this is the 4th source, your current affairs material. That becomes your 4th source. Source number 5, extras. Source number 5 is extras. What apart from these things? These 4 things are basics. These 4 things are non-negotiable. You will have to certainly read these things. Your NCERTs 3, your printed material, your newspapers 2, and your monthly current affairs. These 4 things, there is no compromise on these 4 things. The 5th is the extras. These extras comprise of number 1, economic survey, number 2, other documents, other magazines, for example, Yojana Kurukshetra and all. Economic survey, you will have to read. Again, it is Bible of economics. Don't start to read economic survey just now. अभी पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. We have not studied economics, so therefore we will not be able to understand much. We may be able to understand, but we will not be able to realize the gravity of words that are written in economic survey. We may be able to understand, we may be able to have a look at it, maybe we absorb something, लेकिन to appreciate what is written there, there must be a minimum level of knowledge of economics that we should possess. So please wait for reading economic survey. Wait for reading economic survey. You should certainly read economic survey. नेचुरल क्वेश्चन कई लोग पूछते हैं कि सर हम क्या केवल इस साल का पढ़े, शुड वी रीड इकोनॉमिक सर्वे ऑफ दिस ईयर और प्रीवियस ईयर एज वेल, कितना पीछे जाए? नो नीड टू, एज आई सेड, फॉरवर्ड लुकिंग. नेक्स्ट ईयर का आएगा वो वाला पढ़ लेंगे. बिकॉज योर बैच, बिकॉज वी आर स्टार्टिंग इन अप्रैल, योर classes in other subjects have already started. You have been preparing from month of, I think, February or March. So now you people have time. You people can divide your time in such a manner that you can afford to read this year's economic survey as well. आप लोग इस साल का भी economic survey पढ़ सकते हैं. Why not be in a better position as compared to those who are starting late? Those who will start their preparation in October, I will not suggest them to read this year's economic survey. Why? Because for them it would be too much to ask for them. क्योंकि अक्टूबर में उनकी अगर क्लास स्टार्ट होंगी, दिसंबर जनवरी तक क्लासेस खत्म होगी, तब नया इकोनॉमिक सर्वे आ जाएगा. एंड आई आस्क देम टू रीड प्रीवियस इकोनॉमिक सर्वे. इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू बी ऑफ मच हेल्प टू देम. इट इज गोइंग टू put an excessive burden on them. But for you people, you can divide your time in such a manner that you can read this year economic survey. Therefore you should. Again, there is no compulsion here. Compulsion तो पहली 4 चीजों में भी नहीं है, but at least it's my responsibility to guide you, to advise you that what things can be done so that you are best prepared to appear in the exam and then qualify it. So economic survey, certainly yes, you have to read it. I would suggest as an opinion that you people can read this year's economic survey also. Really good economic survey, lots of concepts, so you can go ahead and read it. For us, more important would be the next year economic survey. Next to extras, 2 magazines, Yojana and Kurukshetra. Yojana, देखो इतनी पतली magazines हैं. These are magazines of 40-45 pages. इतनी पतली magazines होती हैं. Even if you spend 40 minutes per day, if you have divided your day in such a manner that you are spending 40 minutes per day, then with a reading in 5 days, you can complete one full magazine of Yojana. Yojana की पूरी magazine आप 5 दिन में खत्म कर सकते हो, just by spending 40-45 minutes per day in Yojana. पूरी मैगजीन आप खत्म कर सकते हो, और पूरी मैगजीन हमें खत्म करनी भी नहीं है. We don't have to read every article in Yojana. Think, just pick a Yojana, pick an article from that, read it at your own convenience. Read 1 or 2 articles in every month's Yojana at your own convenience. Any article of your choice. All articles in Yojana are good. All articles in Kurukshetra are good. Read any article of your choice. कोई भी एक month की मैगजीन उठाओ. There is a theme. These are thematic magazines. Thematic as in हर महीने की कोई ना कोई थीम होती है. जैसे कभी एक महीने की थीम होगी एग्रीकल्चर, किसी की थीम होगी फूड प्रोसेसिंग, किसी की थीम होगी बजट, किसी की थीम होगी प्राइवेटाइजेशन, बैंकिंग. सो कोई ना कोई थीम होती है उसकी यूजुअली मैगजीन की. रीड 1 or 2 आर्टिकल्स एट मैक्स बेस्ड ऑन योर ओन लाइकिंग. आपको लगे कि ये आर्टिकल छोटा है, ये पढ़ लेना चाहिए, ये बड़ा है, ये पढ़ लेना चाहिए, इस ऑथर का नाम सुना हुआ है, इसका पढ़ लेना चाहिए. Read according to what you are comfortable in, what is convenient for you. Read just 1 or 2 articles, not more than that. Just develop a habit of reading. That would suffice. So this is how you can cover Yojana and Kurukshetra. There is no compulsion that you have to definitely read these magazines. Really good magazines. If you read them, you would be very mature. Your knowledge would improve. कोई source खराब नहीं है. तो आपको पढ़ना है, आप पढ़ो. लेकिन अपना time manage your time well, manage your time. That is just what I want to say, and I've just told you how you manage your time. If you have to focus on Yojana also, Yojana or Kurukshetra, read just 1 or 2 articles per month of every monthly magazine. इसके सिवा कोई और source? Many students have this question that what about books of economics? Any book which you would like to recommend? कई सारी books आती हैं मार्केट में, बहुत सारी books अवेलेबल हैं, बहुत सालों से चलती आ रही हैं बहुत सारी books. Personally, I have not even seen the cover of all the books which are there in market for economics. जो UPSC के लिए specifically economics की subject की book आती हैं. I know about a book Ramesh Singh, I know a book Dattan Sundaram. ये 2 मैंने नाम सुने हैं, और इसके सिवा और भी कई सारी आती हैं. There must be many famous books. I don't even know what is the cover of, how do these books look like, कितनी मोटी कितनी पतली हैं. I don't even know. I personally don't know. Having said that, if you want to read these books, go ahead and read them. अगर आपको लगता है, if you feel that any book of your choice, somebody has recommended any book to you, if you want to read it, go ahead. It is your choice. I'm nobody to impose कि इसको मत पढ़ो, इसको पढ़ो. I'm nobody to impose that. I'm just trying to advise you that you have not come here to become a book collector. You have come here to become a district collector. Book collector बनने हम नहीं आए. Don't waste your energies in collection of books. Somebody says that read this book, this topic from this book, this topic from that book. Don't waste your time and energy in becoming a book collector. Your objective here is to pass this exam, not to collect different books from where somebody has recommended some things to you. These books, any other materials, देखो किसी ने अगर कुछ लिखा है, anybody has written something, some article in magazine, some notes which are available in the market, Vajiram notes, Shriram notes, ALS notes, किसी के भी notes हैं, I am damn sure that they would be very very good. मतलब बहुत ही अच्छे होने चाहिए. इतनी बड़ी कोचिंग है सारी की सारी, सबने नोट्स बनाए हैं, बहुत ही अच्छे नोट्स होंगे. इतने सालों से बुक्स चलती आ रही हैं, दत्तन सुंदरम एंड सो ऑन, ये जितनी भी रमेश सिंह, दत्तन सुंदरम, all these books, I am damn sure that these books would be very very good. Excellent books होनी चाहिए. They would have good material in them. However, the sources that I have told you, they are number one equally good, if not better, and they are comprehensive. You don't need to go beyond these things. आपको इसके बाहर जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. Your basics will be built from your NCERT and your vision material, and the application part, through which you are going to revise all the basics and be prepared for writing answers in mains and in prelims also, are your newspapers, your current affairs material, and these things, the extra that I've told you, economic survey which is a must, and few articles of Yojana and Kurukshetra if you want to read. So these are the things that you should be focusing on, not on any other book. किसी और book के ऊपर focus मत. Finally, just 1-2 रुपए का advice, not again लेना है लो. Your preparation should be based on primarily time management. It is management of time that is most crucial in this exam. Everybody will get at some stage of preparation. At some stage of preparation, you will get anxious. कि मैंने ये चीज नहीं पढ़ी, मैंने वो चीज नहीं पढ़ी, somebody has read something else. You will get anxious at many stages in this exam. Anxiousness को खत्म करने का there is just one way. There is only one way to finish your anxiousness, and that is you prepare your timetable in advance. You prepare your strategy in advance. You focus on your strategy. If there is some source which is there in your strategy, which is there in your plan, and you have not read it, then it's a problem. If the source is not there in your plan, is not there in your strategy, but somebody else is talking about it, you should not be bothered about it. You would not be bothered about it if you have. You would not be bothered about it if you have read, if you have planned your preparation like that. ठीक है? चलो. So these are my, this is my advice, this is my gyan to you regarding preparation of economics, how you start, how you begin, what are the sources. Having said this, let's begin our discussion on economics. And I can see your chat as well. Let me see if there are any questions that you have asked. How many classes? यार ये तुम गप्पे क्यों मार रहे हो यहाँ पे? Guys, see, this portal is meant to assist you so that if I ask any questions or if you have any genuine questions, you may ask them here. If your questions are not being addressed, if you want them to be addressed, you want me to address those questions, you can put your questions here. Or if I ask something from you, you can respond on this particular portal. This portal is not meant for chatting. This portal is not meant कि आप personal बातें करो यहाँ पे गप्पे मारो. Please don't do that. There would be some, now I see there are so many students which are part of, which are online right now, which are watching these classes. अब इतने students में से अगर 10% students भी, 45 students or 50 students out of these many students, even if they are continuously chatting or disturbing, it creates huge havoc. ऐसा नहीं है कि केवल 10% लोग ही कर रहे हैं, 5% लोग ही कर रहे हैं. If you start chatting here or if you start writing messages or discussing something else with somebody else or commenting, it would create disturbances for others, not for me. मैं तो I will simply, मैं इस पेज को मिनिमाइज कर दूंगा, मेरे को क्या है यार. So I will focus on my teaching, but in that process, many of you may not be able to get your doubts cleared properly or may not be able to, your responses may not reach me, and hence I will not be able to evaluate the if there is any deficiency in your understanding or what I have taught. So kindly don't use this portal you as a chatting portal or as something that is meant to waste time for others. This portal is meant for a very specific purpose. Okay, having said that, again it's your choice. You want to use it in any way, keep on using it whatever way you like. Chalo, let's start with our discussion. Let's start with our classes. How to make notes in class? Yeah, that is important. How to make notes in class? Dekho, regarding notes, in this mode of teaching, online mode of teaching, it is difficult for me to dictate notes. You understand this? It is difficult for me to dictate notes of every topic that we'll be covering. So, primarily take running notes. Whatever I am speaking, you feel that is important, you take notes of that. Many times I will also tell you ki bhai, you want to write this thing, you can write it. Whatever I'm going to teach, you can write this thing. I will also tell you that. But do not depend upon me to dictate notes to you. I will not be dictating notes on most of the topics. On some topics which I personally feel are important, or some definitions which I think are important, I will dictate those things. I will dictate notes to you. But for most of the class, you will have to depend upon yourself to take down notes. Don't depend upon me to dictate notes specifically to you, especially of those topics whose notes are there in your NCERTs and in your printed material. There is no point in me repeating those things which are already there with you. Having said that, I'll repeat, I would suggest that you take running notes. Running notes का मतलब क्या है? Whatever I am speaking, if you want to write it down, if you feel that is important, don't worry about it. I have a tendency to repeat twice, thrice, 4 times, and especially teaching through this online medium, I have started to emphasize even more कि 3-4 बार मैं चीजें repeat करता हूँ, and you will understand that what is important, what is not, and hence you will get ample time to write yourself. I will also dictate some things, but not much. Okay? It is, as you understand, it's a little bit difficult for me to dictate in this mode. Anyways, chalo, start karte hain. Let's start our discussion. So, over a course of next 40 to 45 classes, we'll take about 40-45 classes for this course. Over the course of next 40 to 45 classes, we'll be covering economics. And in economics, our journey would be something like this. In today's class and tomorrow's class, we'll keep it very light. Today's and tomorrow's class would be simply a basic introduction to economics. Certain terms that we discuss, certain common terminologies, certain goods, certain classifications, we'll talk about them. We'll talk briefly about development of economics, historical development of economics. We'll talk briefly about that as well. Today's class and tomorrow's class, we'll be talking about these things, building the basic concepts of economics. Hopefully from tomorrow's class, we'll be able to start a chapter 1, or day after tomorrow's class in class 3, or by the end of class 2, we'll be able to start a chapter 1, which is National Income Accounting, the first chapter in NCERT and in your printed material as well. National Income Accounting, wherein we'll be talking about the concept of GDP and all these things. We'll talk about these things. After the chapter of National Income Accounting, then we'll move over to the next topic of developmental economics, in which we'll be talking about poverty and unemployment problem. Poverty and unemployment. So we'll talk about measurement of poverty, different committees, ways to measure poverty, different types of poverty. Then we'll talk about unemployment, some statistics related to unemployment, how to measure them. उसके बाद हम unemployment की बात करेंगे. After poverty and unemployment, we'll transition into the very important part of economics, core economics. We'll transition into monetary policy. So monetary policy will include central bank, that is RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Monetary policy will include determination of money supply, demand of money, various sources from where demand of money comes from. So all these things we'll study in a topic of monetary supply. We'll talk about tools of monetary policy, tools which central bank has in order to control monetary policy. From that topic of monetary policy, we'll transition into the topic of international economics. We'll transition into the topic of IMF, exchanges, current account, capital account, balance of payments, that international aspect, we'll transition into that. Then we'll start our next topic, again related to monetary policy. We'll start our next topic of banking. उसके बाद हम banking करेंगे. Banking के बाद, after we have done banking में NPAs and all these things, banking के बाद, if we get time, I usually take about 2 classes for capital markets, depending upon whether we have time or not. Why do I take 2 classes? Because many times it's students who insist that sir capital markets bhi bata do. From exam point of view, capital markets wala topic is not that important. They don't ask questions from that particular topic. So I will try to avoid covering that topic. But if we have time, if we are on track of covering our syllabus within 40-45 classes, then I may take 2 classes after banking on capital markets as well. Otherwise, we'll skip that topic. वो इतना जरूरी है भी नहीं, इतना important नहीं है. Capital markets, stock market वगैरह वाली चीज. Because it is something that excites everybody. Therefore, many people are anxious कि भाई ये topic भी करना चाहिए. But okay, we'll see then that whether we are on track or not. You know, if we have sufficient time, we may dedicate 2 classes to that. After that, we'll be studying about fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the policy of the government. How does government prepare budget? How does it spend money? What are the ways in which central government gives money to states? How does it spend? What are the different types of deficits? What is debt of the government? Analysis of these things. We'll talk about taxes, taxation बात करेंगे, GST वगैरह की बात करेंगे. We'll talk about tax evasion. How do entities evade paying taxes to the government? What can be done to stop tax evasion? So we'll talk about all these things then. After that, we'll talk about WTO. WTO will also be covered in your IR classes. Economics aspect of WTO would be covered here. And then after WTO, we'll talk about agriculture in about 2 classes or 3 classes. And this is the broad outline that I've given. This whole would lead to completion of our syllabus. So लगभग ये चीजें हम complete करेंगे. If anything, again, this is a very, very broad outline that I've given to you. Obviously, I've not listed all the topics that I would be covering. Many more topics would follow, but this is the broad outline. These are the broad topics that we would be covering in our journey. Fine. चलो, तो start करते हैं. Let's talk about, let's start our journey of this course. Let's start with economics now. So, what is it that we study in economics, especially with relevance to civil services? Why is it that we are required to study economics? Why is it that economics forms a very important part of your preparation? You look at previous 10 years or 10 years or 15 years papers, especially 2010 के बाद से, पिछले 10 साल के देखो, especially since 2010, the weightage of economics in your prelims has increased. Earlier, you used to have only 5-6 questions or 10 questions from economics. Now after 2010 you are having, sometimes you have 20-22 questions also, but usually you have about 17-18 questions तो होते ही हैं. So about 1/5 of your total weightage comes from economics. So why is it that economics is so much in focus as far as this examination is concerned? And when I talked about 3 NCERTs, उसमें मैंने बोला था पहली NCERT माइक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स की है, and I said that read that once or twice, not more than that, but focus more on macro economics and Indian economy. If you look at syllabus of economics, उसके अंदर syllabus में ये लिखा हुआ है Indian economics, बहुत ही vaguely लिखा हुआ है Indian economics and developments related to Indian economy. That is what is written. If you look at the questions of previous years, most of the questions that have been asked from this macroeconomics thing. Macroeconomics. Now, why is it important for us to study macroeconomics? There are broadly 2 branches of economics, macro and micro. We divide economics into 2 branches, macro and micro. Now, what is the difference between these two? In a regular class where you would have been present in front of me, I would have asked these questions from you, would have tried to gather your response, but again, restrictions of this mode of teaching, you are not here, I am teaching to a camera in front of me. Anyways, so what is macro, what is micro, and why is it that civil services के लिए you require an understanding of macroeconomics? कि macro की importance क्या है इस particular course के लिए, इस job के लिए, the career that you have chosen. So first, what is macro, what is micro? Microeconomics मतलब क्या? Microeconomics means when a person, I'm using a word person, but when we graduate a little bit, when we become more mature, I'll use the term entity. Person में you will come, person would include only one person, entity would include any kind of firm as well. So when a person makes a decision for his or her personal use, personal का मतलब I can take decision for myself or for my parents or for anybody in my family, as in it's a personal decision. Any decision that I take for my personal use is a micro decision. Any decision that I take for somebody else, a group, not somebody specific, but a group in general, that becomes a macro decision. Simply stating, what is micro, what is macro? Micro is when a decision concerns only me or a specific individual. That is micro. Macro is when the decision concerns no specific individual but a group. That is macro. You have to decide which mobile phone do you want to buy. Should you buy Apple? Should you buy iPhone 11, iPhone 11 Pro, iPhone 12, 12 Pro, 12 Mini? You are taking a decision for yourself. You are taking a decision, you are deciding that what budget do I have? What would be the cost of the phone for me? Will I be able to utilize this phone if I pay such a high amount? Will I be able to extract that much utility or not? These are the questions that you would be asking yourself when you are deciding which phone to buy. What is the specification? Can I compromise on RAM? Can I compromise on screen? Can I compromise on processor? Or do I want, what is my priority with regards to a particular phone? You are taking a decision for yourself that which phone do I have to buy. That is a micro decision. Should I buy a 5-star rated air conditioner or should I buy a 3-star rated air conditioner? 5-star rated would cost me 40,000 rupees. 3-star rated would cost me 34,000 rupees. So you are taking a decision for yourself only that which appliance to buy. This becomes a micro decision. Other example, for a firm, ये तो बहुत ही छोटे level का micro decision हुआ. For a firm, for example, how many employees, how many labor should a firm hire? A firm has, I start a firm, for example, I will have some capital with me. The money which I use to spend, which I bring to the table to start a company, that is the capital. So I start a company, and to start a company, let's say I bring to the table 1 crore rupees. Now from those 1 crore rupees, I have to budget that, okay, out of these 1 crore rupees, 10 lakhs would go to paying salary of my labor, 20 lakhs would go to paying for maintenance expenditure of my factory, 50 lakhs would go to buying land for my factory, and 30-40 lakhs for whatever amount is left for buying machines in the factory. So I am not taking a decision. I am taking a decision that how do I divide these 1 crore rupees? I have got 1 crore rupees. I have arranged them for my business from some places. I have borrowed from my friends, family, bank, anywhere. And now I'm taking a decision that how should I spend these 1 crore rupees. This becomes a micro decision that a firm is deciding, a person who is the owner of the firm, on behalf of the firm, I am deciding that how should I spend my money? Where should my money be allocated? Now, what would be the objective of allocation? Objective would be certainly to minimize costs and maximize profits. That is my objective. कि cost minimize हो जाए मेरी और profits maximize हो. इस तरीके से I have to take a decision that how do I spend my money? Micro decision. These micro decisions affect whom? They affect only me. I am taking a decision for myself, or if I am, let's say, consultant for somebody else, I am taking a decision. I have to buy a mobile phone for my father. Let's say, no, I am taking a decision for him, but ultimately it's a micro decision. These decisions affect only me, do not have an effect on somebody else. Therefore, these decisions are called micro decisions. Macro decisions क्या होते हैं? Macro decisions are how would vaccination be carried out? How much money should be given to Bharat Biotech? How much money should be given to Serum Institute of India or to any other company which is manufacturing vaccines? Should money be given as a loan or should money be given as a grant? Should you allow Johnson & Johnson to sell their vaccine in India, or should you allow Pfizer to sell their vaccine in India? What are the conditions on which Pfizer should be allowed to sell their vaccine in India? Now, these decisions, when the government takes these decisions, or when specifically the bureaucrat in finance ministry takes this decision or health ministry takes this decision, that person is not taking a decision for himself or herself. Government is not taking this decision for itself. Government is taking this decision for others. This is a macro decision. Macro decision, again, मैंने national level का example दिया, this becomes a macro decision that how would my decision affect others? This decision is not for me. This is a macro decision. So micro and macro. First set of decisions that I told you, they were in the domain of microeconomics. That I have to allocate my capital. What is the maximum, what is the best, what is the optimal allocation of my capital between labor and capital? What is the optimal allocation of my capital? If I buy a 3-star AC or a 5-star AC, how should I spend my money in buying a particular mobile phone? All these are microeconomic decisions. Whereas macroeconomic decision would be that I know, okay, this is the level of unemployment in the country and hence I would have to focus on this particular policy. This is the level of government debt, hence I should focus on this particular policy. This is the level of inflation in the economy, hence I should focus on this particular policy. So, कुछ macroeconomic variables, कुछ macroeconomic indicators, I look at some macroeconomic statistics and based on that I take policy decisions. This is a macroeconomic decision. I hope you get it, the difference between micro and macro. Now it should be very obvious to you that why is macroeconomics more important for civil servants. As civil servants, you are operating in not in your personal capacity but in your public capacity. आप एक public role अदा कर रहे हो, in a public role. When you are government, when you are part of the government, you are performing role of the public. You are not taking decisions in your personal capacity. Hence, when you take decisions for others, it is expected that you know what decisions would be suitable for others in what circumstances. There is a particular circumstances, if you don't know what is the best policy in that particular circumstance or what is at least not the best policy in that particular circumstance, how would you be expected to take a good decision for others? That is why macroeconomics becomes important for policy makers. Macroeconomics policy makers के लिए important है. Policy makers as in those who make policy for others. Microeconomics more important from the point of view of a business person. Let's say I have a firm and I'm taking a decision. That how should my capital be allocated in the most optimum, most efficient manner. That is my personal decision. So that is micro. As civil servant, you are making policy. You will be responsible for making policy, and hence it is expected that you are well versed in the basic tenets of macroeconomics. So that is why macroeconomics is important for us to understand. I hope you get this thing, macroeconomics. Okay. Now, having known the difference between micro and macro, now let's have a look at what is it that we study in economics. देखो, we said microeconomics में क्या था? That you have some amount of money with you and you have to allocate that money so that best allocation, most optimal allocation, your cost should be minimized and your output, your profit should be maximized. In case of macroeconomics decision, we saw that, for example, if there is high inflation in the economy, then a particular set of policies would be in place. If there is high unemployment in the economy, then a particular set of policies would be in place. Taking example of vaccination, if there is shortage of vaccines in the economy, then government would have to decide, okay, how do we ramp up the production of vaccines in the economy? So, macroeconomic decisions. A running or continuing thread in all these decisions is this, that there is a scarcity of resource and you need to maximize the output from that scarce resource. There's a scarcity of resource. Government has limited amount of money. If government had unlimited money, then everybody would be rich. If a businessman had unlimited money, then he would not face the problem of allocating his capital to maximize his profit. He would maximize his profit all the time. Everybody would be always in maximum profits, because everybody is not and cannot be. Why? Because resources are limited. Because resources are limited, there is always a choice that has to be made. Because resources are limited, there is always a choice that has to be made, that what is the best possible use of the resources, whatever limited resources you have, what is the best possible use. And when you make a choice, choice would be between, let's say, two alternatives, 2, 3, 4, 5 alternatives. आपके पास कुछ alternatives होंगे and you'll be making a choice amongst those alternatives. When you choose option A as against option B, C and D, that means you are rejecting B, C and D and choosing A. If you choose A and reject B, C and D, that means the benefits that could have come by choosing B, C or D would not come to you. The risks of choosing A would now come to you. A had some positives, some negatives. Because you have chosen A, therefore those negatives would now be materialized. Positives to hai, there are positives. You have chosen A, there must be some reason that why you have chosen A. A has some positives associated with it, whereas it also has some negatives associated with it. B, C and D had some positives associated with them and some negatives associated with them. You assessed, in your best capability, you assess that, okay, choosing A is a better alternative. When you choose A, that means you reject B, C and D. There must be proper reasoning that why you have chosen A and not B, C and D. Macroeconomics or understanding of economics helps you to provide this reasoning. Reasoning that why did you choose A against B, C and D? क्या reason है? Why did you choose that A is better and B, C, D are not as good as A? What is the reason that why you chose something and rejected others? Macroeconomics helps you to give these reasoning. It helps you to provide this reasoning. Rational, logical reasoning that why is A better as compared to B, C and D. In fact, this is where there is the interface of ethics and economics. Ethics mean the basic thing that we study in ethics is the concept of ethical dilemma. What is an ethical dilemma? Dilemma मतलब क्या होता है? Dilemma is that you have to choose between two things. Choose between A and B. Neither of which is unambiguously right or unambiguously wrong. If A और B में से एक भी option was unambiguously right, then there would have been no choice. Why? जो चीज unambiguously right है, जो चीज हमेशा बिल्कुल सही है, obviously you would always choose that thing. You would not even consider something else because this is unambiguously right. Or if one of them is unambiguously wrong, that means again वहां पे भी कोई choice तो करनी नहीं. If something is unambiguously wrong, that means it will always be rejected. It has to be always rejected. Again, there is no element of choice there. Where does element of choice come in? Element of choice comes in when the alternatives that you have are neither unambiguously right nor unambiguously wrong. And when you have to choose between such alternatives, it is called a dilemma. When you have to choose between these alternatives, this is known as a dilemma. अगर दो हैं तो dilemma, तीन है तो trilemma, 4 है तो quadrilemma, जो भी बोलना है. When this situation is in front of you, that you have to choose between alternatives that which are neither unambiguously right nor unambiguously wrong. This is called a dilemma. जब ethics का aspect है, then we call it an ethical dilemma. Otherwise, economics का aspect है, we call it an economic dilemma. In economics, we are going to deal with this dilemma only throughout our course. That what is the better option that we can choose from? And there is no answer to this, that what is the better option. Economists and hence the governments will always have multiple policy options in front of them, and there is never a right answer that this is what you should choose. There is never a right answer. Governments or governments advised by economists, they will always have to make a choice. That choice would have to be justified by the government with the current circumstances. It will not mean that that particular choice is always right or is always wrong. It is circumstances which help us, it is circumstances which dictate that what choice would be chosen, and from those circumstances you have to give a rational explanation. Okay, this was chosen because of this. Macroeconomics helps you to answer that because, helps you to answer that why. Why did you choose something? Dilemma and choice of that dilemma. Why did I explain this? मैंने इसको explain इसलिए किया है, again with an emphasis. I'm explaining this thing to bring home the point that the choices are never objective. Choices are never definite. There is no one answer to, if you are presented with a choice, there is no one answer that, okay, I will always choose this, or I will always choose the other, or I will always reject the other. Choices are not so in black and white. They're always in that gray area. So economics is this. In economics, the basic problem is scarcity of resources, and that scarcity of resources leads to this issue of choice, making a choice, choosing in a state of dilemma. That is what economics is about. This fundamental problem of economics, इसलिए economics को sometimes say a dismal science. Economics tells that, okay, this is limited, you can do only this. This problem of choice, this problem of scarcity of resources can be analyzed better through a concept which is called as a production possibility frontier or a production possibility curve. I'll explain what this is, what this concept is, production possibility curve. The concept of scarcity of resources, that resources are scarce and in these scarce resources we have to make a choice. This concept can be elaborated, can be explained with the help of the concept of production possibility frontier or production possibility curve. Let's see what this production possibility frontier or production possibility curve is. Let's transport back ourselves, let's say 2500 years or 3000 years, when we were in a largely hunter-gatherer society. The job of a person was to get food. The primary job was to get food for himself and his family. The constraining resource here, let's say the constraining resource is time. That you have daylight of 8 hours. You have daylight of 8 hours. And within these 8 hours, you have to maximize your output. This is the constraining resource. Time becomes your constraining resource, 8 hours. And within these 8 hours, you have to maximize your output. You have to go and gather food for your family, for yourself. Now, how do you utilize these 8 hours? Well, let's say there are 6 scenarios here. Scenario 1, you spend entire 8 hours in hunting of deer. If you spend entire 8 hours in hunting of deer, you will not be able to gather any berries, for example. You are gathering berries, fruits, mango fruits gather kar rahe ho. You will not be able to gather anything. Why? Because entire resource of 8 hours has been spent in gathering this. Scenario B, you spend some part of 8 hours in hunting deer. You hunt 8 deer and that gives you a time to gather 200 berries. Scenario C, you spend some time in hunting deer, you hunt 6 deer and that gives you time to gather 380 berries. Scenario D, you spend your time in hunting 4 deer and that gives you time to gather 530 berries. And ये कोई number, these are not some scientific number, these are, I just made up these numbers so that I can draw this curve. Scenario E, you hunt 2 deer, therefore there is lot of time left with you. You are able to gather 630 berries. And scenario F, you don't spend any time in hunting of deer, entire day is spent in gathering of berries. So you are able to gather 700 berries. तो ये आपके पास 6 scenarios हैं, A, B, C, D, E, F. Different combinations of hunting of deer and gathering of berries. These A, B, C, D, E, F are nothing but your production possibilities. How can you spend your limited resource of 8 hours of time? How can you utilize your 8 hours of time in either hunting or gathering? If you hunt, you gather this much. If you hunt this much, you gather this much. So these are various combinations in which you can utilize your resource. Various production possibilities. Now, as I said, out of these scenarios A, B, C, D, E, F, we have assumed that you are not wasting your time. हम यहाँ पे assume किया है कि आप वहां पे कहीं पे बैठ के छांव में बीड़ी नहीं पी रहे हो या फिर आप अपना टाइम स्पेंड नहीं कर रहे हो, कुछ खैनी नहीं कर रहे हो. यू आर नॉट वेस्टिंग योर टाइम, यू आर यूटिलाइजिंग योर टाइम टू इट्स मैक्सिमम पोटेंशियल. यू आर नॉट वेस्टिंग एनी ऑफ योर रिसोर्स, योर प्रेशियस रिसोर्स. सो ऑल दीज सिनेरियोज A, B, C, D, E, F are best possible use of your limited resource. A, B, C, D, E, F are best possible use of your limited resource. Therefore, there is no scenario which can be considered as better than others. A is equally good as B, B is equally good as C, which is equally good as D, E and F. All scenarios are equally good. Why? Because in all these scenarios, the resource utilization is maximum. How would you now choose whether A should be, कि आपको 10 deer hunt करने या फिर 0 berries, or you have to hunt 6 deers and gather 380 berries, or you have to hunt 2 deer, gather 630 berries. Circumstances differ. So you are a vegetarian, for example, आपके लिए ये scenario सबसे अच्छा है. You are पक्का non-vegetarian, आपके लिए ये scenario अच्छा है. You have more preference to non-vegetarian food, maybe this or this scenario is better. You have more preference to vegetarian food, maybe this scenario is better. So again, circumstances will decide which scenario is that what you choose. Circumstances will decide out of these scenarios, out of these possibilities, what are you going to choose? There is no comment on कि which scenario is better. A, B, C, D, E, F सब equally better हैं. All are equally good or equally bad. There is no comment on which is better. If some of these was better, let's say B, C, D, E, F scenarios ऐसे हैं in which you have wasted your time, and A एक ऐसा scenario in which you have not wasted your time. Let's say B, C, D, F are those scenarios in which some time has been wasted, some resource has been wasted, and A is that scenario in which no resource has been wasted. Then obviously A would be better. It would not be a choice. You would certainly always choose A and not choose others. Whereas if you are saying that resource utilization is maximum in all these scenarios, then there is no commentary on which of these is better or which of these is worse. All are equally good, all are equally bad. Which scenario do you choose will depend upon your choice. That do you want to go for A, B, C, D, E, F? I hope this is clear to you. This is what I want to point out when I explain to you the concept of making a choice, concept of dilemma. This is, as I said, better explained through this concept of production possibility curve or production possibility frontier. What is this PPF, production possibility frontier? What is this production possibility frontier? Production possibility frontier is, these are the production possibilities of your limited resource, that is time. You plot these on this graph. You see, okay, on y-axis you have deer, on x-axis you have berries. Y-axis where you plot, okay, 0, 10, 200, 8, 386, 534, 630, 700, 0. So you draw a curve. You draw some curve like this, and this curve is simply showing you movement from one resource that is dear to other resource varies. Utilization of your limited resource. ये जो कर्व हमने प्लॉट किया, this graph that we have plotted, this graph is called production possibility. This is called production possibility curve or production possibility frontier, PPC or PPF, whatever you want to call it, PPC or PPF. I hope this is clear to you. Production possibility curve, the concept of PPF or PPC. Again, a point that I use to explain to you the concept that the choice has to be made assuming that the resource is being utilized in the best possible manner. There can be multiple choices that would suggest the use of this resource, and you can choose any of these choices plotted on this production possibility curve. Okay, let's move on. The next concept is the concept of marginal cost and opportunity cost. This concept flows from this concept of production possibility curve, the concepts of marginal cost and opportunity cost. What is marginal? What is opportunity? And let me explain. When you choose scenario B out of these 6 scenarios, you have chosen scenario B. The choice of using the limited resource of time is scenario B, in which you hunt 8 deer and you gather 200 berries. You choose this scenario, scenario B. That means you have rejected A, C, D, E, F. You have rejected these scenarios. What is the output that you get on choosing B? You get an output of 8 deer and 200 berries. If you compare this scenario B with A, let's say you compare it with A. As compared to A, in B, you collect -2 deer. You collect these -2 deer, as in 2 deer less you are collecting, and the cost of collecting, at the cost of not collecting, not hunting these 2 deer, what is your benefit? Your benefit is plus 200 berries. आपने 200 बेरीज ज्यादा इकट्ठी करी हैं एज कंपेयर टू सिनेरियो ए एट द कॉस्ट ऑफ नॉट हंटिंग 2 डियर. Therefore, what is the benefit? What is the benefit that you forego? What is the benefit that you forego? क्या benefit है जो आप forego कर रहे हो? When you go from scenario A to scenario B, you forego 2 deer. For what? For 200 berries. The benefit that you forego while choosing a scenario, while choosing an option, while making a choice as compared to any other choice that you had, the benefit that you forego is called as opportunity cost. Is called as opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is the benefit foregone when you exercise a choice. You have got various options, you have got various choices that you can make, and amongst them you chose to exercise choice B over any other. This choice B, if you compare it with A, gives you 2 deer less. These 2 deers are called as opportunity cost of option B over option A. Opportunity cost of option B over option A. Benefit foregone, the benefit that you have foregone. If you compare B with, let's say, D से compare करते हैं. If you compare B and D, between B and D, you have chosen B over D. So benefit क्या है? +4. You have collected 4, you have hunted 4 more deers as compared to option D. However, what is the benefit that you have foregone between B and D? क्या चीज नहीं मिली? What did you lose out on when you chose B over D? 330 berries. By choosing B and not choosing D, what did you lose out on? What was the benefit that you have foregone? The benefit that you have foregone is 330 berries. So therefore, what is the opportunity cost? Opportunity cost को हमने कैसे define किया? Opportunity cost is the benefit foregone द बेनिफिट फोरगोन व्हेन यू एक्सरसाइज एन ऑप्शन ओवर सम अदर ऑप्शन, उसको बोलते हैं हम अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट. सो अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट ऑफ बी ओवर डी इज 330 berries. Opportunity cost of B over A is 2 deer. Opportunity cost of D over B, अगर D choose किया होता हमने, if we had chosen D over B, then what would have been the opportunity cost? Opportunity cost of choosing D over choosing B is the benefit that you forego by choosing D and not choosing B. What is the benefit that you forego by choosing D and not choosing B? You forego 4 deer. 4 deer आपने hunt नहीं करी है. So therefore this becomes your opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is this in this case. B over D की opportunity cost है 330 berries. D over B की opportunity cost है 4 deer. So this is the concept of opportunity cost. In case of government, again ऑब्वियसली अप्लाई कर सकते हो इस कॉन्सेप्ट को. गवर्नमेंट ने चूज किया, ओके वी विल डू पॉलिसी ए इंस्टेड ऑफ पॉलिसी बी. गवर्नमेंट चोज rather than giving a loan to Serum Institute, we will give a grant to Serum Institute. So we have chosen to forego some benefits. अगर हम लोन देते तो हमको इंटरेस्ट मिलता. If we had given loan to Serum Institute of India or we had given loan to Bharat Biotech, we would have earned an interest. In this case, we are not earning an interest. So interest is example of benefit that the government foregoes by giving loan to Serum Institute rather than giving a grant. अब grant दिया है, you have given money as grant to Serum Institute. Just making this, explain this as an example. I don't know whether they have given a loan or a grant. I'm just explaining this so that you get it. If they had given loan, they would have earned an interest. Now they are giving a grant, therefore they would not be earning any interest. So therefore, by giving a grant and not giving a loan, what is the benefit that the government is foregoing? Government is foregoing the interest that it might have earned. So this becomes an example of, this becomes the concept of opportunity cost. What is the benefit that you forego if you choose one option over another option? I hope this is clear to you that what is opportunity cost. The next concept was marginal cost. Marginal cost. What is meant by this term marginal cost? Marginal cost is, understand this term of margin. Very, very important concept in economics. You will find questions regarding opportunity cost related question asked in 2017 prelims. Marginal cost related question has been asked 3 or 4 times in past 10 years. I don't know the exact years. Such questions of opportunity and marginal cost very common in your other examinations, your state level examinations and your ये जो SSC वगैरह के एग्जाम होते हैं, these are very common questions there. So what is this marginal cost? Understand. Marginal. First understand the concept of marginal, then we'll understand the concept of marginal cost. Marginal word का मतलब क्या? Marginal means at the margin. Whenever you are talking about something plus one more, x plus 1, that is margin. When you are talking at the margin, that is marginal. जैसे marginal utility. Let me tell you example of marginal utility. Marginal utility का मतलब क्या है? Let's say I am very thirsty at this moment, so I need a glass of water. The utility of that glass of water for me at this moment is very high. What about second glass of water? Utility of second glass of water is also high, but not as high as first glass of water. What about third glass of water? 2 glass पीने के बाद अब third, x plus 1. What is the utility of third glass? I say maybe okay, दे दो ठीक है, ले लेंगे लेकिन ज़्यादा utility है नहीं. What is the utility of 10th glass of water? If you are offering me a 10th glass, तो मैं बोलूंगा पहले आप मेरे को प्यास से मार रहे थे, अब मेरे को पानी पिला पिला के मार रहे हो. So marginal utility of one extra unit, that becomes marginal utility. I hope the concept of marginal is clear to you. Now let's understand the concept of marginal cost. What is meant by this term? Marginal cost. Marginal cost क्या है? Marginal cost is cost of producing one more unit of output. You have produced 100 cricket bats. You have a cricket bat manufacturing company. You have produced 100 bats. The cost of producing those 100 bats on an average is let's say 1000 rupees. 1000 रुपए उन bats को बनाने की cost आती है. Now your production capacity is 100 bats. आप 100 bats से ज़्यादा produce नहीं कर सकते हो. Within 1 month you cannot produce more than 100 bats. In order to produce one more bat, अगर आपको एक bat और produce करना है, you will have to hire a labor. And when you hire a labor, you will have to pay that labor a wage of 10,000 rupees. 10,000 रुपए आपको उसको wage देनी पड़ेगी. So what is the cost of producing the 101st bat? केवल अगर आप, if you produce only 101st bat, then what is the cost of producing that 101st bat? It would be 10,000 rupees. Why? Because to produce that 101st bat, you are hiring one person and the cost of that person is 10,000 rupees. So cost of 101st bat is 10,000 rupees. But let's say that labor has been hired and that labor can produce 50 bats. 50 bat वो easily बना सकता है. So if you have to produce 102nd bat, तो वो जो 10,000 रुपए की that 10,000 rupees cost of that wage of that labor would now be used to produce 2 bats. Hence, cost of 102nd bat would be 5,000 rupees. Marginal cost, extra cost that you are incurring, you're not incurring any cost. Average cost would come down to 5,000 rupees. So what is the extra cost that you have to incur to produce one more unit of your output? Extra cost that you have to incur extra cost that you have to incur to produce one more unit of output, that is known as marginal cost. In this case, for example, in this case, you have to gather 100 berries more. आपको 100 berries extra gather करनी है. You are right now gathering 200 berries and you have to gather 100 berries more. 100 berries extra gather करने में how much of resource of your 8 hours was your limited resource? How much of resource is required to gather 100 berries? That is marginal cost of berries. Marginal cost of berries, I'll repeat, or marginal cost of deer. The cost in terms of your limited resource. Your limited resource here is time. In order to hunt 2 deers, you require 2 hours. And in order to hunt 3rd deer, अगर 3rd deer को hunt करना है, let's say first deer, पहले deer को hunt करना है, it's let's say easy. There are 100 deers that are gathered in the jungle, that are scattered in the jungle, and it's easy for you to find one deer. So you will hunt one deer within let's say half an hour. However, once you hunt that first deer, other deer will get alert. There is some hunter here, and therefore we must get alert. Hunting next deer would be more difficult as compared to first deer. So hunting of next deer will let's say take you 45 minutes. Hunting of 3rd deer, maybe it takes you 1 hour. Again, ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि आप एकदम से you find a deer and you shoot it down immediately. But rationally expected, the time that you will be spending in hunting 3rd deer or 4th deer after that or 5th deer after that would grow as the number of deer that you have hunt grows. So marginal cost is time required, the resource required to hunt one more deer. Marginal cost of particular thing to produce one more unit of output. यहाँ पे output क्या है? Deer है. The output is deer. To produce one more unit of output, how much of resource has to be spent? To gather one unit of berry more, to gather let's say 100 units of berry more. मान लेते हैं एक berries का unit 100 units है. To gather 100 units of berries more, how much more time do you require? पहले पेड़ पे चढ़े, वहां पे आपने you gathered your mangoes or you gathered your berries. That tree is empty. Now you have to climb on another tree that may not have that much berries as you expected. So therefore the time taken would be more. So marginal cost is the extra time required, the time that you need in order to produce one more unit. That one last unit that you are producing, what is the cost of production of that particular unit? That is what marginal cost is. Opportunity cost was in terms of benefit that you forego. You have 8 deer here. In your scenario B, you hunt 8 deer in scenario B. And when you hunt 8 deer, you are choosing the scenario B over scenario D. B से D को जब choose कर रहे हो, you are foregoing, when you are choosing B over D, you are foregoing 330 berries. So your opportunity cost of choosing B over D was your opportunity cost of choosing B over D was the benefit that you have foregone. Whereas what is the marginal cost? Marginal cost is how much more time do you need to produce one more unit of output. That is known as, that is the concept of marginal cost. Marginal cost, as I said, the cost of producing one more unit, that is what marginal cost is. Still not getting? क्या नहीं समझ में आया भाई, बताओ. देखो मैंने बोला है कि गप्पे मारने का पोर्टल नहीं है. आई विल डिसेबल दिस पोर्टल. ठीक है. ऑल दोज हु आर क्रिएटिंग न्यूसेंस हियर, आज फर्स्ट क्लास है इसलिए आज माइट बी फॉरगिवन. आई डोंट मिन्स वर्ड व्हेन आई हैव टू स्पीक समथिंग. फाइन. दिस इज नॉट अ पोर्टल फॉर यू टू चैट और टू पास ऑन कॉमेंट्स. दिस इज अ पोर्टल फॉर यू टू आस्क योर क्वेश्चंस. दोज ऑफ यू हु आर इंटरेस्टेड may stay, those who are not interested can get out. Marginal cost, opportunity cost. Marginal cost is the cost incurred in producing one more unit. इसमें क्या नहीं समझ में आया? I have produced 10 units of something. I have to produce 11th unit. 11वां unit. To produce that 11th unit, how much money do you require to produce that 11th unit? That is what marginal cost is. Opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? I have chosen something. That means I have not chosen something else. I have to choose between A and B. I had to choose between A and B. And when I choose A and not choose B, there is some benefit that I forego. If I had chosen B and not chosen A, in that case, B के जो benefits थे, they would have incurred to B. If I have chosen A and not chosen B, that means जो B के benefits थे वो मैंने खो दिए ना. I will not get those benefits जो B को exercise करने से होते. So the benefits that I forego by not choosing B and choosing A is the opportunity cost. If you spend your time in writing and chatting here, trust me, you will not understand. Marginal cost from B to A is 100 berries or 200, as 2 deers can be caught for 200 berries. No. See, Vishwanath, marginal cost हम यहां से नहीं देख, we do not tell, हम यहां से देख के marginal cost नहीं बोलेंगे. Marginal cost is what? Marginal cost is, as I said, cost incurred to produce one extra unit. Cost incurred to produce one extra unit. यहां से देख के we don't get any idea of how much cost is incurred. 10 deer plus 0 berries also cost 8 hours. 8 deer plus 200 berries, इनकी cost भी 8 hours है. 6 deers and 380 berries, इनकी cost भी 8 hours है. So we cannot tell from looking at this that how much time is required to gather 100 berries or how much time is required to gather 10 deer. What we can tell is कि 6th deer और 4th deer, 6 से 4th deer जाने के बीच में we are gathering 100 530 minus 380 150 extra berries. तो ये 2 deer की cost, 5th and 6th deer की cost is 150 berries. But we are not able to translate कि 150 berries की cost is how many hours. Hours के terms में we cannot tell. Marginal cost is in terms of the resource. This will give us only an idea of that this costs 8 hours, this costs 8 hours, everything costs 8 hours. We will not get the idea of what is the marginal cost. We can get the idea, but that would be a little bit, फिर मेरे को थोड़ा सा और explain करना पड़ेगा. That is not something which is required. I hope you get it. I hope you get it. Marginal cost, understand, marginal is at the margin. I have hunt 4 deers, now I want to hunt 5th deer also. तो उसके लिए मेरे को कितना टाइम एक्स्ट्रा रिक्वायर्ड है, और वो जो टाइम मेरे को एक्स्ट्रा रिक्वायर्ड है, दैट 5th और 6th ईयर का टाइम, दैट विल कॉस्ट मी 150 berries. Fine. This is marginal cost. Opportunity is what you lose out on, the benefit that you lose out on by not choosing a particular option and choosing a particular option. You chose C and not D. जब C choose किया तो you have left out on. जब C choose किया, you get 2 extra deer, but you don't get these 150 berries. So what is the benefit that you have lost? You have lost 150 berries. Obviously for this benefit you are getting 2 extra deers, लेकिन benefit lose तो हुआ है ना, benefit क्या lose हुआ है, 150 berries का benefit lose हुआ है. So that becomes your opportunity cost. Let's expand this concept of PPF, production possibility curve, for a country. Now, जैसे हमने बात करी 3000 years back, time was that limited resource, and with that limited resource you had 2 options, either to hunt berries, either to hunt deer or to gather berries. They were the 2 options that you had. Now let's talk about a country. Now for a country also, the resources are limited, and if the resources are limited, a country would have to make a choice that how do we want to spend those resources. Let's say in a country only 2 outputs are produced. A country is producing only 2 outputs, let's say table and chair. From all its resources, केवल 2 चीजें produce होते हैं. Let's simplify our discussion. Let's say only 2 things are produced, only tables and chairs. If only tables and chairs are produced, a country has 1000 rupees, and from those 1000 rupees, the country is deciding that how much do we produce. 1000 rupees को spend करके you can produce some amount of chairs, you can produce some amount of tables, some combination thereof. जैसे scenarios हमने देखे थे A, B, C, D, E, F. Similarly, you can have similar scenarios here, A, B, C, D, E, F. Tables and chairs. You can produce 50 chairs, you can produce 0 tables and 150 chairs. So again, some combination of tables and chairs can be produced by country by allocating its limited resources. Again, just like we plotted that, we can plot this on the graph as well. A country has output of tables and chairs, so this will become production possibility curve of the country. जैसे table and just like we drew the production possibility curve of deer and berries, we can draw a production possibility curve of tables and cherries, table and chairs. So this becomes PPF of a country. That was a PPF of a person. How much can a person do with his limited resource? This is PPF of a country. What can the country do with its limited resources? So ये country का PPF बनाया हमने regarding tables and chairs, that the total resources of the country can be used either to produce this combination, this combination, this or this combination. A country can use its resources, limited resources, to produce any of these following combinations. Now, if you look at production possibility curve, that PPF was based on the assumption that limited resources are utilized to their best possible use. Limited resources are utilized to their best possible use. You had limited resources, और जो 8 घंटे थे आपके पास, in that we discussed that the assumption was that you are not wasting your time there, and hence 8 hours are being completely utilized. If there was an element of wastage of the resource, then that would have been a suboptimal outcome. अगर हमारा resource waste कर रहे होते, if we were wasting some of our resource of 8 hours, then we would have been at a suboptimal outcome, rather than जैसे scenario A था, in which you hunt 10 deer and gather 0 berries. Maybe you were able to hunt only 7 deers and gather 0 berries. So what would you say? That this 7,0 is a suboptimal outcome as compared to 10,0. Why? Because utilizing your resource to the best possible extent, you could have hunt 10 deer. whereas you hunt only 7 deer. Hence 7,0 is a suboptimal outcome. Number one. Number two, someday, because let's say you got lucky and therefore you are able to hunt, let's say 15 deer rather than 10 deer. Let's say you got lucky someday and you are able to hunt 15 deer rather than just hunting 10 deer, which was expected of you. So 15,0, let's say, would become a more than optimal outcome. 7,0 is a suboptimal outcome. 10,0 is a optimal expected outcome, and 15,0 is a more than optimal outcome. Maybe because of luck, maybe because of any other factor, you are able to hunt 15 deer that day. If you are able to hunt 15 deer that day, that means next day when you go to hunt, your expectation would again be कि कल 15 हंट किए थे तो आज भी एटलीस्ट 12 तो हंट कर ही लूं. I hunt 15 deer yesterday. Today I expect to hunt at least 12 deer. हो सकता है कल लकी हो गया हूं लेकिन आज भी 12 डियर तो हंट कर ही लूं. Next day when you go, you may think that I should be able to hunt 13 deer or 14 deer or at least 12 deer. Point is, your expectation from yourself or let's say others expectation, जहां पे मार्केट में जाके आप बेच रहे थे, their expectation from you would increase because one day you got 15 deer, therefore from next day everybody would expect that you would be able to get 15 deer or at least 12 deer तो आप लेके ही आओगे. More than 10 you would always bring. Now when that becomes the expectation, then 10 becomes a suboptimal. अब आप अगर next day 10 deer ले आए, then next day others would not be happy. Maybe you yourself would not be happy. Why? Because previous day you were able to hunt 15. Day after you are able to hunt only 10. You may not be happy with yourself again. So now maybe 10 will become suboptimal. You would work on improving your tools, improving your skills. Maybe you would hire few people and now you would go in a group and start hunting deer so that you are able to hunt more efficiently. Point is, you would try to increase your productivity through use of technology, through use of more sharp tools. Earlier, let's say you were using stones, sticks. Now you would be using, let's say, iron. Through improvement of your tools, through improvement of your techniques, through improvement of your strategy, you are trying to increase your productivity. Productivity meaning how many deer are you able to hunt per unit of time. So therefore, when you increase your productivity, the earlier optimal outcome will become suboptimal. अगर आपकी productivity in general increase कर रही है, you will be expecting that now I have better tools, I have a team, I have a better strategy. Therefore, 10 will become suboptimal and maybe 15 becomes optimal. Then again, over a period of time, you get even better tools. Now you get a bow and arrow. You probably are able to shoot faster. You are able to shoot better. Your people who are there along with you, they also develop skills to hunt. Maybe now you are able to hunt 30 deer per day. So now 15 will become suboptimal. Point is, over a period of time, the concept of optimal outcome changes on the basis of how much tools do you have, how productive you are, what is the level of technology. The optimal outcome will keep on increasing. The expected outcome using same resources. 8 घंटे में पहले at max you were able to hunt 10 deer and now in 8 hours at max you expect to hunt let's say 30 deer. Your expectation keeps on increasing. Why? Because your productivity has increased. Hence, your optimal outcome will keep on increasing. Optimal utilization of resources will keep on improving with improvement in technology, with improvement in your productivity. This concept is plotted here on this curve. This PPF curve of a country. ये कंट्री का PPF कर्व है, प्रोडक्शन पॉसिबिलिटी फ्रंटियर कर्व. दिस कंट्री इज प्रोड्यूसिंग दिस कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ टेबल्स एंड चेयर्स. राइट नाउ दिस कंट्री इज प्रोड्यूसिंग दिस कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ टेबल्स एंड चेयर्स. And this combination of tables and chairs is plotted here on this curve. However, if this country produces less than this combination, अगर इस combination से कम produce करता है, if this country produces less than this combination, rather than producing 0,50, the country is producing 0,35, or rather than producing 90,30, the country is producing, let's say, 85,15, less than what can be produced. If it is producing less than what can be produced, you say that the country is suboptimally. I think this would not be visible. I'll use another color, or I'll write it here. If this is the case, the country would be using its resources suboptimally. Utilization of resources is suboptimal in this place, if a country is producing less than this. Whereas if a country is producing here, agar production possibility frontier yahan hai, if a country is producing here, then you say that if a country, tell me, can a country produce more than this? 0,50 is the optimal allocation of country's resources. Can a country produce 0,60? Agar 0,50 is optimal allocation of country's resources, given the current state of technology, in the current state of technology, a country cannot produce 0,60. In the current state of technology, in the current state of productivity, a country cannot produce 0,60. It can produce only 50 tables. It cannot produce 60 tables. It cannot produce 200 chairs. It can only produce a maximum of 150 chairs. वो 200 chairs नहीं produce कर सकता in the given state of technology. In the given state, it cannot produce more than its production possibility curve. However, going forward, with improvement in technology, with improvement in productivity, it can aim to produce this much. It can aim to expand its production possibility curve. Expansion of PPF. Going forward with increase in productivity, with change in technology, a country can expand its production possibility curve. So all the points on the curve are optimal points of production. All the points inside the curve are suboptimal points of production. All the points outside these curves are more efficient than the optimal allocation, therefore not possible. More efficient than optimal. Optimal is defined as most efficient. यहाँ पे सबसे ज्यादा efficient use of resources है. Therefore, all these points are not possible. These are certainly desirable. ये desirable तो है, but these are not possible. These are possible but not desirable. This is desirable, not possible. It can only become possible when there is an improvement in technology, when there is an improvement in productivity. Only then can a country push its production possibility curve outwards. I hope this is clear to you. By upgrading skills of its workers, for example, workers which were producing 50 tables earlier, if they are imparted new skills, if new machines are gotten in the country which are more effective, more efficient, then a country can produce more tables than 50. But given current state में no point beyond this production possibility curve is possible. In current state, production possibility curve denotes the best possible use of resources in the current state. In future, when productivity increases, then PPF may expand. I hope this is clear to you, that what is this connotation of PPF. All the points inside PPF suboptimal, all the point inside PPF suboptimal, possible but not desirable. Points outside PPF desirable but not possible. When would they become possible? They would become possible only when there is an increase in productivity, there is a change in technology, there is a new impartment of skills. Only then would these points become possible. Fine. It's 6:38. एक काम करते हैं, let's take a break of about 10 minutes. In the meantime, I'll read some of your questions if there are any. There are some questions. There are some questions that have been asked by the coordinators. I'll ask them. Please tell sir to speak in English. I'm still learning Hindi and I will learn soon. Arey Mithun, I'm trying my best to speak in English as much as I can. Rest assured, whenever I use Hindi, might be you have noticed it already, whenever I use Hindi, the next sentence is, it has now become my instinct, the next sentence, and then automatically I translate that in English. I try to use Hindi to minimal extent. Sometimes it is involuntary, but most of the times I try to use English only, and whenever I use any sentence in Hindi, then next sentence is automatically the English translation of that, and I take care of this. I'll take care of this. Is marginal cost to get an extra item made always greater than normal cost of the particular cost? Marginal cost of the extra item to be made always greater than normal cost. देखो normal cost तो I have not defined Kunal anywhere. I have not said that what is normal, what is not normal. Normal cost क्या है? देखो cost, the cost of a product has different connotations. Cost can be studied as the average cost. Cost can be studied as fixed cost, variable cost, marginal cost. So there is no normal cost of something. So normal cost, the word normal is not defined anywhere, that what is normal. Anyways, maybe by normal you are referring to the term average. Maybe by normal you refer to the term average. Is marginal cost always greater than average cost? Certainly not. Certainly not. That's not the case. That marginal cost is always greater than average cost. No. For example, we talked about 100 bats. What is the marginal cost of producing 99th bat? Or 98th bat or 100th bat? The extra cost incurred in producing those bats, which when the capacity is nearing, would be very less. Marginal cost of producing one more unit up to 100. Up to 100, you don't need to install any new capacity, you don't need to employ any new labor, simply need raw material for that. So up to 100, cost of producing one extra unit, let's say 90th unit, 91st, 92nd, 93rd, 94th, 95th, the extra cost of producing these units would be diminishing, certainly yes. So average cost would be higher, but marginal cost would be less. From 100 to 100 first, now you need to, let's say, install a new machine or hire a new labor. In this case, now marginal cost would be more. Fine. Whether PPF curve, Ravi is asking, sir, whether PPF curve will always be upside down curve. Upside down as in you mean to say like this. You want to draw a straight line, you want to draw a straight line, you can draw a straight line. It can be anything. Certainly, if you are thinking of any other shape, this is the broad shape. This is the broad shape. If you are thinking कि PPF का वैसा होगा, तो obviously it cannot be like this. Certainly it cannot be like this. Production possibility curve. Limited resource. If you have unlimited resources, then with those unlimited resources, PPF can be like this. Because you have defined PPF in the context of limited resources, then certainly limited resource means you have 8 hours of time, you can spend 8 hours on hunting deer completely. That would produce a maximum output of deer. Or you spend 8 hours in gathering berries, that would produce a maximum output of berries. Or some combination, sometime you hunt, sometime you gather, sometime you hunt, sometime you gather, some combination of these two. This will be produced. So curve would always be like this. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Is total cost, average cost, marginal cost important for examination or just understanding of them? See, all these are micro concepts. We are not going to deal in. Not going to delve into that. You read them from your microeconomics NCERT, but they are not important. They are not part of this syllabus, not part of the course. Fine. So let's take a break of about 10 minutes. We'll regather, we'll regroup again after that, and then we'll continue from here. Okay. Chalo. First class. So Everything's good. लिखो. Let me dictate you some notes. Take some notes for you. Write down. Give heading Introduction to Economics. Give heading Introduction to Economics. And समीम, रॉबिन एंड अभिषेक, जो लास्ट 3 लोगों ने कमेंट किए हैं, केवल यही 3 लोग बताना. After 2 minutes of me dictating, just these 3 people tell me if the pace at which I am dictating is fine for you. Is it too fast, too slow, normal? Please tell me after 3-4 lines. ठीक है. और बाकी सब लोग मत बताना, बस लास्ट 3 जो कमेंट्स हैं, I am reading these names. Just these 3 people tell me. Give heading Introduction to Economics. Write down. The fundamental problem that economics as a discipline tries to answer is the best way in which limited resources, in the fundamental problem which economics tries to answer is what is the best way, वो what रह गया था, what is the best way in which limited resources can be utilized, full stop. Both macro and microeconomic decisions have to be taken in the context of limited resources available with the decision maker. Full stop. The problem of limited resources can be understood through the concept of the production possibility curve. ब्रैकेट में PPC. The production possibility curve or PPC, is the optimal output that can be achieved or produced through the use of a constraining resource. Full stop. When a decision is made, that is something is chosen to be produced as against something else. element comma the element of choice the element of choice the element of choice and preference the element of choice and preference always comes into play always comes into play. Full stop. Next paragraph. Assuming full utilization of the limited resource. Assuming full utilization of the limited resource. Assuming full utilization of the limited resource. A set of different outcomes can be produced. A set of different outcomes can be produced. Full stop. For example, if time is the limiting resource, and a person can use his time either hunting or gathering food, and a person can use his time either hunting or gathering food, comma, the optimal utilization of time, comma, the optimal utilization of time will produce various combinations of either of the two possibilities. Bracket में the deer hunt or food gathered or berries gathered. The deer hunt or berries gathered. Bracket close. Next paragraph. If the person utilizes his time in a less than optimal manner, then his output would be less than what could have been produced by optimal utilization of time. Such an output is certainly possible. But not desirable. Full stop. At the same time, an output more than the optimal, at the same time, an output more than the optimal is desirable is desirable but not possible, is desirable but not possible. Full stop. This leads to the very questioning. This leads to the very questioning of the term. This leads to the very questioning of the term optimal. Quotes में लिखना है इसको, the term optimal. This leads to the very questioning of the term optimal. Full stop. What is optimal? What is optimal? Quotes में, this whole in quotes. What is optimal? This whole in quotes. What is optimal is debatable. What is optimal is debatable. And certainly changes with time. And certainly changes with time. Full stop. What was optimal? What was optimal 10 years before today? 10 years before today would be suboptimal today. Would be suboptimal today because of increase in productivity. Because of increase in productivity with which the output is produced. Full stop. Hence the word optimal. The word optimal is specific. Hence the word optimal is specific to a particular time. And the level of technology. With which resources can be utilized. At that time. Next paragraph. Write down. A developing country like India. Probably would not be able to utilize its resources. Optimally at present. डैश लगा के लिखो, इसके आगे डैश लगाओ, मेक अ डैश एंड देन राइट डाउन. Country like India would not be able to optimally utilize its resources at present. Dash, write down. Dash or arrow, write down. That is, it may have a higher potential. To produce from its present resources, as compared to what it is producing, as compared to what it is producing at present, as compared to what it is producing at present. Full stop. On the other hand, a developed country, may be producing very close to what its optimal level of production is. A developing country may be producing very close to what its optimal level of production is. Full stop. स्टार लगा के राइट डाउन, नीचे लिखो कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ मार्जिनल कॉस्ट एंड अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट. कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ मार्जिनल कॉस्ट एंड अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट. राइट डाउन opportunity cost. First write down opportunity cost. Write down opportunity cost में opportunity cost refers to the benefit foregone when one choice is exercised, and the other is not, full stop. For example, when choosing A over B, the benefits of B, when choosing A over B, comma, the benefits of B, when choosing A over B, comma, the benefits of B would not be accrued or realized. The benefits of B would not be realized. Hence, the opportunity cost of choosing A over B are the benefits that are foregone, benefits of B are the benefits of B that are foregone. Full stop. Next, write down marginal cost. Marginal cost refers to the cost incurred to produce one extra unit of output, from the current level of production, full stop. For example, if the current level of production of a car manufacturer is 50 cars, if the current level of production of a car manufacturer is 50 cars, then what is the cost? What is the cost that it will incur? What is the cost that it will incur in producing the 51st car? What is the cost that it will incur in producing the 51st car? Full stop. Marginal cost is in the terms of the resource used to produce one more unit of output. Marginal cost is in terms of the resource used to produce one more unit of output. Full stop. Whereas opportunity cost is in terms of the alternate choice. Whereas opportunity cost is in terms of the alternate choices, choice apostrophe s. The opportunity cost is in terms of the alternate choices, benefits, not in terms of resource, not in terms of resource. Opportunity cost is when you choose B over A. For example, here, when you choose B over A, opportunity cost is what is the benefit that you forego. You are foregoing 10 tables. 10 टेबल कम प्रोड्यूस हो रही हैं in B over A. 10 less tables are produced here. So therefore opportunity cost of B over A is 10 tables, the benefit that you forego. Marginal cost is what is the cost of producing these 50 chairs. ये जो 50 chairs हैं इनको प्रोड्यूस करने की कॉस्ट क्या है? Well, you are producing these 50 cost at the cost of 10 tables, but what is the cost in terms of resources? Resources, money, how much money you have or how much labor you have, how much time you have. इन 50 यूनिट को प्रोड्यूस करने में कितनी कॉस्ट लग रही है, दैट इज व्हाट मार्जिनल कॉस्ट इज. आई होप दिस इज क्लियर टू यू. ओके, सो ठीक है, नोट्स मिल गए अबाउट पीपीएफ, अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट, मार्जिनल कॉस्ट. चलो, so this discussion of PPF for a country, this was important for us. The last paragraph that I have dictated to you, regarding the concept of PPF, in which I talked about developing country and developed country. Now that is the important aspect here. That is the that is the important aspect that we need to focus on. Developing country, we have discussed that for a developing country, their production would be far away from their optimal production. For a developing country, their production would be far away from their optimal production. Best possible utilization of resources. Do you think, for example, in India, right now we are utilizing our resources to our best possible way? Well, point number one, every one of us has a different connotation about what is best. आपको लगता है that maybe we are utilizing to the best possible extent. Somebody else says, नहीं, हम our GDP can be 5 trillion whereas it is 2.9 trillion. Somebody else says no, it can be 3.5 trillion but it is 2.9 trillion. Somebody else says it shall probably only be 2.5 trillion but it is 2.9 trillion. So first of all, everybody has different connotation of optimal. Me, you, everybody else would have different connotation. Okay, what is the optimal output of our country? GDP, we'll discuss in national income accounting what GDP is, but I hope all of you know that India's GDP $2.9 trillion के आसपास है. You know this concept. Anyways, so everybody will have a different connotation. Number one. Number two, but one thing would be certain. In case of India, let's say, versus case of USA, chances are we would say that India is not able to utilize its resources to its full potential or its full extent, whereas in case of USA, the resource utilization would be near the maximum, would be near the full potential. So in case of a developing country, the distance between the production possibility curve and the actual production, not desirable but possible. Not desirable but possible. This is, let's say, actual production, and this is the optimal production. The distance between developing countries' production possibility curve and actual curve would be great, whereas in case of USA, this difference would be very narrow, would be very small. So I hope you get this point. That was the conclusion that I wanted to arrive at using this concept of production possibility curve. It gives us an insight, it gives us an idea about limited resources and what is the way to utilize them. Now let's talk about why is there a difference between these two things. Why is there a huge gap between production possibility curve of India and its actual production, and very less gap in the actual production curve and production possibility curve of USA. To understand this, we'll have to look at history. We have to look at historical process of economic decision making. We'll see in the next half an hour or next almost half an hour or next 40 minutes, we'll see evolution of economics as a discipline. Evolution of economics as a discipline. थोड़ा सा historical concept देखेंगे. It should be interesting to you. What is the method of economic decision making? How has economic decision making evolved over a period of time? What is the essence of this particular subject? And through this historical arc, obviously we are not going to study economics history in toto. हम तो केवल 30-35 मिनट में इस चीज को देखने हैं. We are going to look at it in only 30-35 minutes. But that should give us an idea about what to expect when we study this subject over the course of next 40 classes, 40-45 classes. What is it that we are going to expect? What is it that we are going to study? We'll get that idea when we look at what is the history of economic decision making. How has decision making in economics evolved? Basically, how has economics evolved? Well, first thing that we saw was that economics, the basic problem here is that there is limited resource, and how do you utilize that limited resource? Now, to utilize that limited resource, as I said, everybody has their opinion. Everybody has their opinion on almost everything today. Few days back we were economists, today we are immunologists, then we become pulmonologists, we'll become every kind of experts. तो expert तो सभी हैं यहाँ पे, opinion तो सबके पास है हर चीज के ऊपर. And everybody has an opinion on economy that this is the best way to utilize a resource. So we'll talk about how has economic thinking evolved over a period of time. How has economics as a subject, as a discipline evolved over a period of time. Economic thinking कैसे evolve हुई है. Limited resource है, we have a limited resource and we have to utilize that limited resource. Intention of everybody has always been that the limited resource should produce maximum possible outcome. Intention of everybody who is advising the government or the government itself, intention of everyone has been that how to maximize the outcome by utilizing the limited resources that we have. What is the policy that we should pursue that will maximize the outcome of using the limited amount of resources that we possess? Intention of everybody has been this, to maximize the outcome. However, the process of maximizing outcome has been different for different persons in different times in history, in different times. Earlier, economic decision making was based on, again, objective was same, but the way to achieve that objective was different. Today, the way to achieve that objective is different. Maybe tomorrow, the way to achieve that objective is going to be different. Objective क्या है कि limited resource से maximum outcome produce करना है. This is basically economic thought, that how have economists tried to solve this problem of maximizing output from limited resources. However, economists try to argue that this is the best way to utilize your limited resources. However, economists try to do that. Well, let's have a look at evolution of economics. Till 1700s, lagbhag till 1700s, economics as a discipline was not as organized. Certainly, it doesn't mean that economics thought did not exist. Economic thought, everybody, we have been trading with the rest of the world since long, how to maximize output from resources. All that thought has always existed. But it was not present in a more organized form, literature form में, as in specific subject की जो form है, उस form में economic thought was not there. Yes, there have been treatises, for example, Arthashastra, beautiful treatise on economics, but it's less on economics but more on statecraft. Not to say that it is not on economics. Arthashastra comes from economics. Arthashastra is the literal translation of the word economy. Anyway, but there has not been one organized process, one organized thought on economics as a discipline. Till 1700s, economics or the utilization of resources of the state objective was to maximize the outcome. But the manner in which that outcome was sought to be maximized was pursuit of fiscal military objectives. Till 1700s, largely we had a fiscal military state. What is this fiscal military state? Or what is this concept of mercantilism that I have written here? Mercantilism, merchant, word comes from merchant. That you promote trade and commerce between your country and some other country with the objective of enriching your country. And why do you want to enrich your country? Why do you want to enrich? Fiscal is treasury. Why do you want to enrich your treasury? You want to enrich your treasury so that you can develop military capability. Fiscal military state. Till 1700s, the purpose was, the objective of economics, as in the guidance of using the resources, ki resource should be utilized in a manner that maximizes trade, and not just trade, it maximizes the resources that are earned by your country. Your country should earn more as compared to some other country. You do business with somebody else, you sell to them so that they give you their resources. They become dependent on you. And they become dependent on you, your treasury gets enriched, your fiscal state improves. Therefore, you can build a stronger military and you can annex, you can do your conquests. You can annex that particular place. So objective of economics till 1700s was largely this. Economic decision making or economic policy was largely guided by military objectives. Military objectives were the ones which were the guiding force behind the economic policy of the country. So till 1700s, unorganized thought, but largely guided by the military policy. Fiscal military state bolte hain isko. And when you have fiscal military state, in that case, it is the king who decides what is the best possible use of limited resources. The king will dictate, okay, these items would be produced and these items would not be produced. For example, carpenters of the, I'm just making this up, carpenters of the country will not produce anything else. Primarily, they would first produce ships, or they would produce blacksmiths, or any person of such skill would first produce weaponry or arsenal for the military, and then they can produce something else. So primary utilization of limited resources. Agar iron ore hai, if there is iron found in your kingdom, iron would primarily be used to make tools for your military and not something else. So king is deciding, the king is deciding how would limited resources be utilized. There is wood in your kingdom. Primarily it would first be used to make ships, and not ships for trading purpose, but ships for building up your navy. So use of resources is being guided by your military objectives. Who is guiding them? The king is guiding them. Why? Because king has to expand his or her empire. So this was fiscal military state, in which the primary decision making body was the king, was the state. State used to dictate that how would resources be utilized. Entire economic policy was formulated by the state. State would dictate that how would limited resources be used. So this was this fiscal military state in which state had control over everything. यहाँ पे state का control है. Next, now economic thought starts to gather more organized literature. अब यहां से हमारा proper economics start होती है, यहां से mid 1700s से. Economic thought starts to gather more organized form, gets more organized. And this is the birth of classical economics. Classical economics, Adam Smith, the father of modern economics. Classical economics talks about something called as a laissez-faire state. Laissez-faire. This is the spelling of laissez-faire state. This is a French word, laissez-faire. Latin word, laissez-faire state. क्या मतलब है laissez-faire state? What is this classical economics? Well, earlier it was the king who was deciding that how would limited resources of the country be used. And king was using those limited resources and that was producing certain outcome. Adam Smith comes and Adam Smith says that state should not interfere in economics decision making. And individuals should decide that what is the best possible resource, what is the best possible use of a resource that he or she possesses. I must be free. I must be free to decide that how do I want to use my resources? How do I want to use my skill? The king should not dictate that where should I be employed or where should I go, what should I produce. King or state must not dictate, because Adam Smith argued, the foundation of classical economics, Adam Smith argued that when there is a state intervention, when state intervenes, when state decides, जब state decide करेगा, when state decides, the output is suboptimal. The output is suboptimal. When state decides, when there is external policy that guides the decision of how would resources be utilized, the output is suboptimal. Adam Smith argued through his writings that output would be suboptimal if there is state intervention. Therefore, he said, rather than state intervention, there would be a laissez-faire state. Laissez-faire. What is meant by this term laissez-faire? Laissez-faire means, this term laissez-faire means let business do business. इसका मतलब होता है let business do business. What is this term? Let business do business. Let business do business, or this laissez-faire state means, Adam Smith is saying, or classical economists are saying, this thought, it gathered pace and developed its own branch of economics called as classical economics. Classical क्योंकि सबसे पहले organized literature, first and foremost organized literature was towards this thought, and this came to be known as classical economics. What is it that they are saying? They are saying that till now it was state that was deciding what is the best use of resources. But state's decision, when state decides, when somebody else decides that what should I do, it will not lead to producing of optimal outcomes or best outcomes. When somebody else is saying that I should do this, then my incentive to do that would be less. I should be free to decide that what do I want to do. In fact, this classical economics is this period, mid 1700s, this period is the development of the phase of liberalism as well. Liberalism, classical liberalism. Classical economics, classical liberalism, simultaneous development, freedom. This classical economist talks about freedom, freedom of an individual to choose how he or she wants to use his labor, how he or she wants to use his skill. How do I want to utilize the resources that I have? This is what classical economists say. And because it says it, liberty of an individual, it says this, that let business do business, meaning the state should not interfere. The state should not tell the business what to do, what not to do. Business should itself decide what it wants to do. Let business do business. Business should, a firm should itself decide, an individual should itself decide how do I want to use my resources. This is what this laissez-faire state is, for which classical economics argue. A very interesting concept of classical economics is the concept of this invisible hand of God. Invisible hand of God. Those of you who are interested in football may have come across this term sometime, hand of God, invisible hand of God. In 1986, when Diego Maradona scored the winning goal against England in the World Cup final, he used his hand to punch the ball. That was the winning goal. And everybody appealed that, okay, this is a hand, this is a foul goal, this is not a fair goal, but the referee did not see it, and hence that goal was allowed. After the match, Diego Maradona was asked by you, why did you not say that this was your hand? There is clear evidence that you handballed and therefore it went inside the goal post. So he used this term that it was the invisible hand of God. He used this term and made this term famous, invisible hand of God. Before Diego Maradona made this term famous and this came to be associated with football, this term was originally here, classical economics, laissez-faire state. Invisible hand of God. Invisible hand of God क्या है? They say, classical economists are saying, no, you don't have to write this. ये लिखो मत, इस चीज को लिखने की जरूरत नहीं. This is just story that I am telling. Building up of what is to come in future. Future matlab in next 40 classes. Invisible hand of God means here that invisible hand, you are saying, if everybody works selfishly, I am working in my own self-interest. I am selfish person. I am working in my own self-interest, and so are you, and so is everybody else. If everybody works in their own self-interest, it would produce the best outcome for the society as a whole. I am working not for somebody else. I am not working with the intention of maximizing the utility for society, maximizing the output, maximizing the benefits for the society. I am not working for society. I am working for myself. I am using my skill, I am using my labor, I am using my resources for my personal growth. I should enrich myself. I should enrich myself, I should grow myself, and so should everybody else. Everybody is free to do whatever they want. And in this process, what would everybody do? Everybody would try to grow. Everybody would try to enrich themselves. Nobody is working for the state. Nobody is working for the society. Nobody is working for anyone else. But everybody is working in their own best self-interest. However, when everybody works in their own self-interest, that will automatically produce society's best self-interest. 1 और 1 11. 1 plus 1 is equals to 11. Sum of the whole is greater than sum of parts. Every part working towards maximizing its output will lead to maximizing the output of the entire part. That is what classical economists argue. Classical economists argue that there is this invisible hand of God. समझ में आया? Nobody is working for benefit of society, but society will get benefited. Everybody is working for their own best self-interest. Nobody is working for anybody else's interest. But because everybody is working for their own interest, it will produce the best outcome for everybody else, for the society. This is what invisible hand of society is. So this is what classical economics argue. Let business do business. Everybody should be free to choose how they want to utilize their resources. So this is the first phase of development of economics. Classical economics. Everybody is free to do. No intervention by state. No intervention by state. No intervention by state. Fine. Next, in about 1775, Adam Smith came out with his book, The Wealth of Nations, and since then, since about 1750s or 1770s, 1775 में Adam Smith की book आई. Since then, from 1775 till about 1930, in fact 1935 to be precise, for more than 150 years, classical economics enjoyed dominant position in the world of economics. In the world of economic thought, classical economics is what enjoyed dominance. In fact, देखो, everybody will interpret any principle. You give me the man, I'll give you the rule. There can be anything which is written as a rule anywhere. I will interpret the rule according to my convenience. Classical economists say this. Everybody will interpret classical economics in their own sense. In fact, many times it has been argued that classical economics policy is what led to, for example, wars. Everybody working in their best self-interest, and when you are not able to meet your best self-interest, you start compromising somebody else's interest. Maybe true, maybe false. Again, that is something for a debate. It is not for us mere mortals to comment upon as of now. Point is, classical economists enjoyed dominance in economics thinking for almost an uninterrupted period of 150 years plus. Certainly, classical economics is what led to the seed of development as we know it. Classical economists led to industrial revolution. Yes, industrial revolution did have bad consequences, but undoubtedly, no doubt, industrial revolution has had a far more positive outcome for all of us, everybody around the world, as compared to no industrial revolution. If there was no industrial revolution, probably we would not be conducting these classes. Certainly not through this way, probably. So industrial revolution, certainly yes, it had produced bad outcome for some people, but for many people, but overall, no doubt about it that industrial revolution produced good outcomes for a larger number of people, and in the long run, certainly yes, it did. So classical economists led to that industrial revolution and so on and so forth, optimizing output. ये सब चीजें classical economics की देन है. But then comes the Great Depression of 1930s. What is this Great Depression of 1930s? The Great Depression is a period between World War I and World War II. It starts in 1920s, late 1920s, precisely 1928-29. This Great Depression is a state of economics, of an economy in which an economy starts to contract. Starts to contract means an economy was producing 100 chairs previous year, and it was expected that it will produce 120 chairs next year, 125 chairs year after that, 130 chairs year after that. Expected that over a period of time your technology will grow, incomes would grow, and hence more and more chairs would be required. However, if it produces less number of chairs, if its output is less as compared to previous years, we say that the economy has contracted. During COVID, for example, you may know that Indian economy in the first quarter of 2020, second quarter of 2020 contracted first by about 23%, in next quarter about by 10%. So contraction means last year we were producing more output as compared to the output produced this year. इस साल जो हमने output produce किया, that is less than what we produced last year. Contraction. When this contraction is sustained over a long period, then we say that there is depression. Technical definition क्या है? I'll let you know when we study national income accounting. Technical definition, in fact, depression की कुछ नहीं होती है. Technical definition is of recession. We'll look at that when we are in our chapter of national income accounting. जब हम GDP, when we understand the concept of GDP, then we'll understand these concepts. But broadly, I hope you understand what a depression is. Depression is when there is a prolonged slowdown, prolonged contraction in the economy. When there is prolonged slowdown, certainly there would be high unemployment in the economy. Many people would get unemployed. People would not be able to afford even basic things. So that would create problems in the economy, problems for people. And how does government take decision in that situation? There is a depression. Many people are unemployed. What decision should government take in that situation? Well, if the government says that we follow classical school of thought, we follow classical economics, and classical economics says that government should not intervene, things will automatically adjust themselves, things will automatically get better, and government says that we should not intervene in the economy. Why? Because our intervention will produce less than optimal result. Well, in that case, the people who are unemployed, the people who are left jobless, who cannot meet their two basic ends, cannot afford 2 square meals of day, 2 squares of meal per day, those people would be left to fend for themselves. They cannot wait forever for the economy to correct. If I don't have food on my plate today, I may sustain for 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 2 months, but I cannot sustain my family for, let's say, 1 year. I cannot keep on waiting for economy to self-correct by no state intervention and keep on waiting कि भाई economy ठीक हो जाएगी because classical school says so. Therefore, I should keep on waiting. I should remain unemployed, unable to afford basic necessities for myself or my family. I cannot wait. In Great Depression, what happened? In Great Depression, when economies started to contract, US economy starts to contract first, and then this Great Depression has its effect on rest of the world as well. When Great Depression happens, then economies start to contract, people are unemployed, and the governments are thinking that economy will correct itself automatically. However, the economy is not correcting, and you cannot keep on waiting indefinitely for economy to correct itself. Then will come an economist by the name of John Maynard Keynes. J.M. Keynes. J.M. Keynes. Keynes or Keynes, however you want to say it. No, contraction of economy last year cannot be termed as depression. No, we'll talk about technicalities later. अभी तो यार कहानी सुनो, बस कहानी सुना रहा हूं. अरे नहीं यार, वर्किंग क्लास वॉज एक्सप्लॉइटेड. क्या वर्किंग क्लास वॉज एक्सप्लॉइटेड? कैसे, कहां से आइडिया आते हैं सब? वर्किंग क्लास, इफ वर्किंग क्लास वॉज, समबडी राइट वर्किंग क्लास वॉज एक्सप्लॉइटेड. भाई ऐसा है, एवरीबडी वर्क्स फॉर देमसेल्फ, एवरीबडी टेक्स अ डिसीजन फॉर देमसेल्फ. Yes, there have been negative outcomes also, but largely there have been positive outcomes. ऐसे पेसिमिस्ट तरीके से देखना नहीं है हमको, वो आइडियोलॉजी विशेष के ऊपर हमको ज्यादा नहीं जाना है. Anyways, then comes John Maynard Keynes, one of the greatest economists ever, J.M. Keynes. J.M. Keynes says that classical economics is right. Classical economics is right. He says, I agree with you that state intervention produces less than optimal outcomes. However, a person cannot be expected to wait forever, for infinite time, for economy to self-heal. In such times, government intervention is necessary. This is what J.M. Keynes say. Government intervention is necessary to pull the economy out of the slumber that it is in today. Government intervention is necessary. If let's say last year COVID happened, government said simply, we cannot do anything, हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते. If government says that we cannot do anything, then in that case, government is leaving people on themselves, fend for themselves to die or to remain unemployed, become difficult for people to meet to meet their basic needs. Obviously, government would take steps. Certainly, government did take a lot of steps last year. Government spent so much last year, made money available almost at free of cost last year so that unemployment does not suffer, or even if it suffers, the impact can be absorbed in a relatively less amount of time. Government cannot simply sit back and say that we will not interfere. This intervention that the government does is the idea of Keynes, that government must interfere in certain times. To quote, Manmohan Singh used this quote in Parliament once. We cannot wait for the long run, because we cannot wait for long run, meaning we cannot wait for an infinite time, because in the long run we are all dead. This is what John Maynard Keynes used. We cannot wait for the long run because in the long run we are all dead. The quote used by Manmohan Singh in I think 2009, or he used this quote in Parliament in 2010 in response to austerity measures of Europe. We'll talk about these things again in our monetary policy class. हम इनके बारे में बात करेंगे. Again, this is just a build up to what is coming, what we can expect. In the long run, we are all dead. In the long run, economy will self-heal according to classical economics. Self-healing हो जाएगी economy की, state should not intervene. But in the long run, we are all dead. This is what J.M. Keynes says. Therefore, state must intervene. State should intervene. That is Keynesian economics. Interventionist state should intervene. Again, like classical economics, Keynesian economics would also be interpreted according to convenience by different people. Keynes says, for example, Keynes gives a theoretical, academic perspective of intervention by the state. Keynes gives an academic basis of why should state interfere and why would intervention of state produce good outcomes. Keynes ने उसका academic interpretation दिया. Keynes gives an academic basis to that. How will it be interpreted? Smartly or wisely or cunningly or according to convenience? How would it be interpreted? Well, Keynes is saying that states should interfere. By default, the states like to interfere. By default, the fiscal military state, by default, the state likes to interfere. The politicians like to spend. Politicians like to spend. Why? Because when they spend, they can they can seem to be doing things. Politicians like to spend, governments would like to spend. It's their natural instinct. So Keynes, when he gives an academic background, academic justification for state to interfere, therefore state will interpret it in what manner? State will interpret, Keynes is saying interfere in the times of Great Depression. Keynes is saying there are certain specific times in which the government should interfere. However, it gives an academic basis. Just जैसे यहाँ पे भी misinterpretation का scope है, यहाँ पे भी misinterpretation का scope है. Here also there is a scope of misinterpretation. It gives an academic basis for state to interfere whenever it likes. Well, for example, in India, we discussed the outcomes are not optimal. Our actual production is far beyond our production possibility curve. Maybe we all would agree to this. And therefore, government would say, because we are not producing, hence it makes a viable case, a legitimate case for us to intervene. Keynes is giving an academic basis for that. So always there would be an academic basis. There would be a justification for excessive government spending or excessive government intervention in the economy. Government would say, you can produce vaccine, you cannot produce vaccine. You can import or you cannot import. Intervention by the state. Keynesian economics. Interventionist state. Keynes gives a specific intervention. Keynes gives a specific role to the government for intervening in certain times. Again, that would be interpreted according to convenience. Next, monetarism. Next state of development of economics, monetarism. 1960s में. This is a school, Milton Friedman's का school, monetarism. What is this monetarism or minimalist state? Monetarism is incorporating many threads of classical economics. Monetarism is incorporating many threads of classical economics here. And monetarism is basically talking about the role of monetarism. I'll not talk about it in detail as of now because this monetarism is entirely a chapter on monetary policy. This is a chapter on monetary policy. Monetarism. The role of monetary policy, the role of central bank. What should be the role of central bank? This is what monetarism talks about. Keynesian policy, the Keynesian economics, it talks about role of government or fiscal policy. Fiscal policy. Role of government, fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the policy made by the government. How would government spend? Where would government spend? How much would government borrow? In which sectors would it spend? Fiscal policy. Keynesian economics is concerned with fiscal policy. But excessive spending by the government, अगर सरकार ज्यादा पैसा खर्च करती है, if government spends excessively, that would create problem of inflation. If government spends, how would government spend? Government would spend money, let's say government employs more number of people in MG Narega. Therefore, government will give them wages. Therefore, more money would be in hands of people. If more money is in hands of people, large number of people, then they would use that money to buy something. For example, let's say those people who did not have resources earlier to buy eggs, now they would be buying eggs. That would increase the prices of eggs for everybody else. So inflation would increase. If government spends excessively, excessive spending by the government, if Sarkar spends excessively, that would create the problem of inflation. And governments like to spend. Forget about inflation. Governments like to spend. Governments don't care if prices increase. Governments would like to seem to be spending. So fiscal policy would lead to more and more inflation. Therefore, when there is more inflation, the currency in your pocket, it starts to deteriorate. 100 rupees can buy 1 kg of apples today. Tomorrow, they will not be able to buy 1 kg of apple. Maybe they are able to buy only half kgs of apples. So therefore, value of 100 rupees in your pocket deteriorates or not? It does deteriorate. So that deterioration will be talked about when we talk about monetarism or minimalist state. Minimalist state should interfere only in minimal circumstances. Not in all, only in minimal circumstances. That is what monetarism is about. In 17s and 80s, a concept of welfarism will develop. Welfarism. Welfarism is exactly opposite to minimalistic state. This is maximum state, maximal state. Welfarism क्या है? Welfarism is that state becomes responsible or state assumes responsibility of a welfare of people. State assumes responsibility of welfare of people, and welfare of people also becomes a vague term. Vague term का मतलब क्या है? Welfare of people, state would now try to meet all the needs of everybody all the time. Take for example, MSP. Now, thanks to the government, now you have been reading about MSP, farm laws, agriculture marketing. If you have been reading newspapers since past 3-4 months, which I expect that you would be reading, you know about what MSP is and all these agriculture marketing things and all. Do you know how much is MSP over cost of production? Cost of production of wheat is somewhere around 1000 rupees or about 1200 rupees per quintal, whereas MSP is about 1925 rupees. Cost of production is about 900 rupees and MSP is about 1925 rupees, 1925 rupees. MSP is more than 100% over cost. MSP of wheat is about 106% of cost, लगभग 106% है. MSP of wheat is 106% of cost, लगभग 900 rupees is the cost of production and 1925 is MSP. 100% more than double is MSP. Nowhere in the world does any business give you a return of 100% consistently. Some business may give you in 1 year a return of 50%, 60%. Some business in some year. Consistently a return of 100%, no business anywhere in the world. Nothing anywhere in the world can give you a consistent return of 100%. So MSP right now, especially with regards to wheat and rice, is so high that it is giving you more than 100% returns on your cultivation, on your inputs. Similar with sugarcane. Cost of cultivation of sugarcane about 1200 rupees. FRP of sugarcane about 2500 rupees. उसमें भी almost 100% more. 1.5 नहीं है, 1.5 तो minimum है. 50% over cost of production, and we'll discuss in agriculture class which cost of production. There are different cost of production, A2 plus FL, C2 cost. वो discuss करेंगे हम उस क्लास में. तो तब बताना यार 1.5 मुझे पता है 1.5. 50% तो minimum है कि minimum 50% we will give whole cost of production. In case of wheat and rice, it is more than 100%. Anyways, assuring a good price, a reasonable price to a person for his produce can be considered a matter of right, especially when the person belongs to a vulnerable group, vulnerable section. I'll repeat, assuring, for example, 100 rupees is my cost of production. I am a vulnerable person. Giving me a fair value of return over my investment may be considered my right. A fair value क्या है? Let's say fair value is 20%, 30%, 50%. Over 100 rupees, over 1000 rupees of cost of cultivation, let's say 1500 rupees, I claim okay, it's my right. 1500 रुपए मेरे को मिलने चाहिए. But 1900 rupees, is it a right or a privilege? It's more of a privilege. MSP is more of a privilege than a right. The rate of MSP, not MSP as a concept, nahi, rate, the price of MSP, 1900 रुपए, 106% over your cost of production, that is more of a privilege. That can in under no circumstance be justified as a right. Be considered, किसी भी circumstance में you cannot say that it is a right. More than 100% over your cost of cultivation, it's certainly not right. It's more of a privilege. However, if state assumes the responsibility, state का मतलब the government of India or government of states, state governments. If government assumes all the responsibilities of all the persons all the time, then the powerful groups amongst those persons, amongst the citizens, the powerful groups will be able to exert pressure over the government to transform their rights into their privileges. I'll repeat. If government says that we are responsible for welfare of everyone, in that case, government के पास resources तो limited हैं. How will government ensure welfare of everyone? All the needs of everybody cannot be met at all the time. It is only some needs of some people that can be met. All the needs of everybody cannot be met. Only some needs of some people. Point number one. Point number two, what needs of what people? If you say some needs of some people, then you have to choose those some people whose needs have to be met. Who would be those some people? Those some people would be the ones who are able to exert more influence, more pressure on the government. For example, sugarcane farmers as a lobby are very strong, and hence sugarcane farmers will be able to exert pressure on the government to continuously increase the price which they are entitled to get in sugar mills. So because of this welfareism, this maximalist state which assumes all the responsibility, will create such positions, will create such issues in which somebody's rights will transform into privileges and rights of others will not be, उनके minimal rights भी नहीं मिल पाएंगे. For example, rights of small farmers. Small farmer is not able to sell at MSP. It is the large farmer which is able to sell at MSP. Small farmer is not able to produce wheat and rice, is able to produce only vegetables. Vegetables are more perishable as compared to wheat and rice. If entire storage capacity is appropriated by large farmer to store his wheat and rice, where will small farmer store his onions or potatoes or bananas or brinjals or whatever he is producing? Not able to store. And because he is not able to store, he will be forced to dump them in the market to the trader, to the middleman. Middleman will command whatever price. Why? Because there is no storage space. Why? Because all the storage space which is already built by the government, सरकार ने ही सारी storage space बनाई है, and all the storage space has been appropriated by those large farmers. Where would small farmer be able to storage produce? Would not be able to store. Hence, would be at the mercy of either the large farmer or the trader. So one person's privilege costs another person his or her rights. उसके rights का हाना, no, that person's rights are not being met. Why? Because one person is enjoying the privilege there. This becomes the issue with welfare state. I hope you get it. But what is welfare state? Rights. When state assumes the responsibility of creating welfare conditions for all, because it does not have unlimited resources, it cannot meet welfare conditions for all. It has to create welfare conditions for some at some times. And when it has to choose those some, it is those groups which are powerful which will be able to exert influence on the state. So that is what welfare state is, welfareism. Welfareism, thankfully, was able to be controlled in West, but in India, because of our policies, our nature of state, it was not able to be controlled, and hence it has grown out of proportion in India. We'll talk about this welfareism also at a later date. But again, a heads up to this concept of welfareism. Right now, economics thinking is based more on behavioralism and internationalism. आज की तारीख में more of economics thinking is more related to behavioralism and internationalism. Behavioralism is an idea which says incorporating of human behavior in economics principles, in economics policies. Incorporate human behavior in framing of economics policies. उसको बोलते हैं behavioralism. Government has to frame an economic policy. It was already framing economic policies earlier, and those economic policies were framed for my benefit. Always they have been framed for the benefit of the citizen. However, government's economic policies were not able to have an effect on me. मेरे ऊपर effect नहीं आ पा रहा था उन government policies का. Therefore, even though well-intentioned, they were not able to have a desired impact on me. Behavioralism says that incorporate my behavior in formulating of economic policy so that my tendency to associate with that policy, to become a beneficiary of that policy increases. Incorporate my behavior. I'll give you an example, and from that it will become more clear. For example, government has so many pension schemes, so many health insurance schemes, so many life insurance schemes that it run for marginalized people, for it unorganized workers, for different sections of vulnerable people. It has so many welfare schemes. अब सरकार ने राष्ट्रीय स्वास्थ्य बीमा, गवर्नमेंट क्रिएट्स राष्ट्रीय स्वास्थ्य बीमा योजना, नेशनल रूरल हेल्थ मिशन, गवर्नमेंट क्रिएट्स ऑल दीज मिशंस, but those missions are not reaching the beneficiaries. Those missions did not reach, those programs did not reach the intended beneficiaries. Now government would incorporate the behavior of people in its economic policies so as to ensure that those missions reach the intended beneficiaries. How? I'll give you an example. For example, government comes out with this Jan Dhan Yojana. In the Jan Dhan Yojana, government says that we will open bank accounts of everybody. While opening bank accounts, government also silently, ऐसा नहीं है कि धोखे से, but silently government also pushes 3 more schemes simultaneously. Opening of bank account and 3 more schemes. 3 more schemes: Atal Pension Yojana, Jeevan Suraksha Bima Yojana, Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana. One for pension, one for life insurance, one for health insurance, accidental health insurance. So 3 schemes. Why? Safety. Government wants to provide social security to vulnerable people. For example, let's say I have health insurance or life insurance. Maybe a person who is vulnerable, let's say my maid, she does not have. Now government would like to provide health insurance, life insurance, pension benefits to that person also. But that person is not availing those benefits. सरकार ने scheme तो चला दी, but the benefits are not being availed by that person. Now what will government do? Government will open Jan Dhan Yojana, and in Jan Dhan Yojana, government will simultaneously roll out these 3 schemes along with Jan Dhan Yojana. At the same time, what will government do? Government will say that by default, when you open an account when you open a Jan Dhan account, by default, you will also be enrolled in, let's say, Jeevan Suraksha Bima Yojana, in your accidental health insurance scheme. By default, you will be enrolled there. You want to unenroll yourself, you are free to do so. But the default option is that you would be automatically enrolled. When the default option is that you would be automatically enrolled, chances are that more people will be enrolled. If I gave you a choice, अगर मैं आपको बोलता कि भाई this is Jan Dhan Yojana and these are 3 different schemes, tell me you want to enroll in these 3 schemes or not. Maybe more people would have answered कि अभी केवल Jan Dhan account खुलवा लेते हैं. Right now let's open Jan Dhan account, बाद में we'll keep on seeing this. Therefore, intended beneficiary does not get the benefit of the social security scheme that the government has created. But now what has government done? Government has bundled these schemes along with Jan Dhan Yojana accounts. Therefore, now you are getting a default option. Default option is that you are enrolled here. You may want to unenroll yourself, that is your choice. But default option is that कि आपको इसमें enroll कर दिया गया. Now chances are that more and more people would become beneficiaries of these schemes by default. So behavior of people is incorporated in policy making. This is what behavioralism is. Behavioralism is less of a separate economics thought. Behavioralism is a method of making government policies more effective. This is what behavioralism is. So this is the modern economic thinking. आज की तारीख में most of the economic decisions are taking with behavioral mindset, with behavioral economic mindset. Internationalism is this argument. Internationalism is the branch of economics that talks about more and more openness, more and more free trade, openness to trade, development of relationship between countries, global value chains, global supply chains. All this is what internationalism is. That countries should become integrated. Countries should indulge themselves in free and fair trade. Rules of trade must be fair, must be free, must be enforceable. Most efficient production should happen. Production of a good should happen in that country or that place where it can be most efficiently produced. This is what internationalism is. We'll talk about this internationalism aspect in our chapter of WTO and IMF. यहाँ पे हम इसकी बात करेंगे. Fine. So this is the broad outline of economics thinking. How has economic thinking evolved over a period of time? From tomorrow, we'll start with a fresh topic, some basic concepts of economics. कल हम बात करेंगे. The class is over. Tomorrow we'll talk about law of markets, law of demand, law of supply. We'll talk about different types of goods. So we'll start with our basic economic concept. आज तो केवल एक introductory lecture था economics के ऊपर, that what is it that we study in economics, how has economics evolved as a discipline. Fine. So that's it from my side for the day. Hopefully today's lecture was not heavy for you. Even if it was heavy, just keep it in stride. swallow कर जाओ, swallow करके सोचो कि this is just a build up for things to come. This was just a introduction to all the things that would be there. I have not explained any of these things in detail. I have just given you a brief outline of how has economics thought developed. We'll talk about these things when we move forward. Some things we'll go into detail, some things we'll not go into detail. For example, Keynesian economics. Some part of Keynesian economics we'll study, some part, obviously Keynesian economics is a full semester, is a course in full semester in your master's graduation level पे भी बहुत कम पढ़ा जाता है. We'll study some things about Keynesian economics, some things about monetary policy. These are the two topics that we'll be focusing most on. इन chapters के ऊपर हम सबसे ज़्यादा focus करेंगे. Monetarism, monetary policy and fiscal policy, these are topics. We'll talk about these. Monetary policy, in fact, is the chapter that will take maximum number of classes individually in this particular course. Fine? ठीक है, तो let's meet tomorrow. Let's meet tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll start with our basic topics of markets, as in demand, supply, and different types of goods, laws, and all these things. So let's meet tomorrow. Read first chapter, national income accounting. We may start it tomorrow. Probably we'll be able to start it tomorrow, maybe. Read first chapter, the first few parts you can read. उसमें कुछ चीज दी हुई है, Keynesian economics, classical economics. So we'll see each other tomorrow then. Fine? Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much and fine. Take care. Bye-bye.